Will the recorder call the roll?
Councillor Duggar.
Here.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Here.
Councillor Hassan.
Here.
Councillor Kimmy.
Here.
Councillor Teeter.
Here.
Councillor Tivnon.
Here.
Mayor Beatty.
Here. Okay, tonight we do have a very packed agenda. We will be having public comment. We will be having some staff items, consent agenda items, some presentation. We'll be concluding with some public hearings, some action items, and 3 work sessions. So the night is long, especially I know a couple of us are traveling. So as we kind of tackle tonight, council, thinking about how many times you're coming in on every single item, making sure that your comments are concise so we can move through these. We were anticipating a lot of public comment, but it doesn't look like that is to be the case tonight. But with that, we will get underway. Tonight, we're going to do 2 minutes of public comment instead of our normal 3 per public comment. Thank you for participating in public comment this evening. The public comment section of our agenda is essential for local government. Each person has 2 minutes to speak. Our governing body takes input into consideration. However, in order to comply with Oregon open meeting laws, this isn't a time for dialogue. Rather, it is a time for us to listen. If follow-up is needed, our city manager and city recorder are here to take notice. If you'd like to talk to us, you could just use your raised hand feature. All right, Kathy, you're up first. You have 2 minutes to address the council.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to, am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank you for addressing our homeless issues as you have done over the last few months. Really, really made me proud to be here. And I also would like to address, I looked at the council's goals and priorities for this year and looked at the anti-racism roadmap and how many times it was checked for the goals and priorities. Every single box should have been checked there. Every single goal and priority looked at through a racism lens. But I want to specifically talk about housing and economic prosperity. Housing is a special difficulty for our people of color and our people from other ethnic backgrounds who are in the city. There are evictions, opportunities for obtaining housing and shelter are less, and there is a link between economic prosperity and home ownership. And the last time I checked, this statistic is probably 3 years old, people of color were being charged higher mortgage rates than white people in this town. And so I would like you to include racism as part of your investigation. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Parmethi, you have 2 minutes to address the council. You've been granting talking privileges.
Good evening and namaste. My name is Parmethi Winnimani. I'm a proud resident of the city of Beaverton and a high schooler in the Beaverton School District. I'm in 9th grade in Sunset High School. On weekends, I spend time learning the Hindu culture through Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh HSS sessions on Sunday. I learn about my culture and celebrate festivals along with other families and children. Along with that, I get to volunteer for HSS where I teach younger kids and take part in Adopt the Road cleanups. Today, I'd like to give an update on the 16th Annual Health for Humanity Yogathon, or Surya Namaskar Yajna, or SNY, happening between January 14th and January 29th, 2023, organized by HSS. The 16-day event aims to create awareness about yoga and its advantages in achieving a healthy mind, body, and spirit. Each year on January 14th, Hindus worldwide celebrate Makara Sankranti, a day that marks the changing of seasons, embarking on a journey of days becoming longer, which is why the festival symbolizes sunshine and life. To mark this occasion, HSS has organized the SNY. Since its inception in 2006, participants of all faiths and beliefs from 43 states have actively taken part in the Yogathon through yoga centers and community organizations. Thank you for the Beaverton City Mayor for giving the proclamations for Surya Namaskar Yajna in 2023. We greatly appreciate your support for this initiative. HSS invites community groups and individuals to participate in the Yogathon. This program is open to all ages, genders, and races, and we aspire to collaborate with the community as much as possible. On behalf of HSS and the local community, I request you to join one of our yogathons during these 2 weeks. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Kanisha Khan?
Can you hear me clearly?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you. Namaste and a very happy New Year to everyone. I am Kanishkan Tamlarasan, a happy resident of City of Beaverton, and also a volunteer for Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, similar to Kabiti. HSS is a voluntary, non-profit and cultural organization that focuses on promoting a sense of civic duty and spirit of selfless service. Today, specifically, I'm excited to share about the recently completed Seva Diwali food donation drive in Oregon that was coordinated by HSS. Seva Diwali specifically is a national level initiative started by the motivation from Seva Dharma, which states that the service to humanity is service to divinity, which basically boils down to putting smile in the faces of people in and around our community. This year, Seva Diwali was coordinated by Mr. Hiral Pandya, a core volunteer for HSS, a resident of Beaverton. 16 other organizations, including Seva International, Cooper Mountain Elementary School, and Apna Bazaar participated this year. We collected non-perishable food items through 24 food collection centers in and around Beaverton, and even through doorstep pickup. As a result, this year we got more than 10,000 pounds of food, which was donated to the Beaverton Police Department Pantry and Tualatin Valley Gleaners Pantry. On a national level, Seva Diwali resulted in more than 630,000 pounds of food collection across 32 states. On behalf of Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, I thank all the participating organizations, volunteers, and donors for their generosity and hard work. We extend our sincere thanks to Mayor Bedi and all the city councillors for providing us this opportunity to share this information. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Atul?
Can you guys hear me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and wishing everybody a happy 2023. So my name is Atul Shah. I live in Bethany, and both of my kids, they attend Beaverton School District, one in high school and another one in middle school. And my spouse is also a BSD employee, Beaverton School District employee. I'm here to represent an NGO called Helping Souls of North America, or abbreviated as HSNA. Among the other things that HSNA does is we work with the homeless shelters. And last year we provided on an average, about 4 meals every day in collaboration with the Portland Homeless Shelter. So apart from this, as a part of Indian Festival Diwali, we were additionally able to collect 1,050 pounds of food from the community. So we coordinated with Mr. Hiral Pandya from HSS and the citizen of Beaverton to make this possible. So we are glad that one of the beneficiaries of this drive also included the Beaverton Police Department pantry as well. And lastly, I would like to thank everyone on this call for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Samuel?
All right, can everybody hear me?
We can.
All right. First of all, thank you to all the city council members. I know you guys are working really hard. We can see it here in the downtown business community. I also want to thank our local police enforcement. They are extremely responsive to our concerns. I just wanted to raise concerns about the homeless community camping and now setting up tents in the library parking lot. It was a big talk of the office today. My staff parks in the Beaverton Library parking lot, and they felt very uneasy today. Were tents set up in parking spots. These are, my staff is primarily female, showing up when it is dark outside around 6:15, 6:30 in the morning. I know we don't know the exact backgrounds of the people that are sleeping in these tents with all that's gone on in the last couple of years and the effort that the city is making to get responsible homeless citizens into shelters. It's our understanding that most of these people may not be safe people to be around. So I just want to express concerns that my staff is afraid to walk to and from their cars in the mornings and evenings. They are requesting us to walk them to their cars. I just don't think that this should be, happening in our community. I know it's a big issue that's being addressed, but please, for the safety of my staff and for our customers and patients coming to and from our practice, taking a hard line on this would be much appreciated. So thank you, you guys.
Carissa?
Hello, this is Parisa. I'm one of the member of Free Roam PDX. We are an organization and we are currently having protests all over Portland area. Portland, Beaverton, Tigard is going to be this week. We were in touch with you guys and we wanted to see if there is any chance that you support us. We are protesting for the situation that we have in Iran, and it's been about 20 weeks that we are all being active, and all the people from 200 to 600 people we have each week. And we really appreciate if you could announce a resolution and support us in any way that you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for the council that may not know, city staff worked with THPRD to create a space within the city for them to host a Beaverton protest. And I know later during council items, we'll be discussing a resolution, but city staff has been engaged. And I just want to give a kudos to THPRD, who stepped in relatively quickly when we didn't have any city space available. And it's a good show of partnership of making sure that jurisdictional relationships work. And when we called them, they made it happen in one day. Ben, you're up next. All right, Ben, you've been granting talking privileges. Okay, it looks like Ben's unable to join us this evening. We will move on to council items. Any council items? Oh, sorry. Councilor Duggar?
Thanks, Mayor. I have two. I've spoken with Ginny about these already, but I wanted to make them public. Couple things. Tiger just recently completed lowering their residential speed limit to 20 miles per hour on most of their residential streets. So I've asked that Ginny, and I would like the council to give me a thumbs up if you would like to look into this essentially, but I've asked Ginny to direct staff to look at what resources that would take for us to implement that within Beaverton. What are the costs and timelines? And I think that's really important to me. It's really important to the community. It's stuff that I constantly hear. And I think it's something we could do. The second one, I've also asked Ginny to look into review what resources impact it would be for us to, as a city, to adopt the Vision Zero ordinance. It is an ordinance that's gone international. Actually, it started international, and many cities in the US have approved it, but it is essentially a safety first ordinance on pedestrians, cyclists, and cars, like in our design work. And I know there's some complete street stuff going on, but I think this is an opportunity for us, for the staff to bring back to us what that would look like, what the impact would look like, the cost and timeline. And I would like the staff to do that.
Thank you, Councilor Duggar. I think when it comes to the work around an ordinance, it's a lot more than just the council saying, hey, make this happen. Given we're so close to setting priorities, my preference would be to see this in a priority, but I'm open for council debating. And just so we know, ordinance are a lot of work. It's not like a resolution. And I would say the lowering of the speed limit was just passed. And so Ginny, I would be inclined to support that, Ginny, looking into what it would take, particularly with, we have a lot more interjurisdictional roads than Tiger does. So maybe a report from our traffic engineer on what that would take. We have a lot more streets than Tigard and a lot more interjurisdictional connections than the city does. But I'm open to hearing.
I'm good with either way. I just think we need to start moving on it. And to be clear, Tigard's isn't all of their residential streets. In fact, the policy very specifically says that there's certain conditions that will kind of flag it for. So I think the majority of them will be, but it's certainly not everything, and it's not. So I just kind of wanted them to look into like what that would look like and the impact and timeline and resources. So
yeah, I think a white sheet report on what it would take would be the first step. And I think when it comes to round an ordinance, I don't think we're working on these rules right now, but I think around an ordinance, it would need to get into the work plan. Ginny, do you have any thoughts?
No, I would agree to let council talk about the more work plan oriented item for the ordinance at the goal setting, and not an issue to put some type of memorandum together for council with respect to the lowering of residential speed limits. I've already been contacting staff to look at what that would take to pull together, and then council can determine next steps.
Is that amenable to you, Councilor Duggar?
Sounds good. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm assuming the rest of the council's okay with that as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at head nods. Yep.
Okay,
Cool.
wonderful.
Thanks everybody. All righty.
Councilor Huston?
Well, I actually want to clarify, Vision Zero is not an ordinance, it's a resolution. So I don't know if that changes how people feel, but I do support it and think it'd be interesting. I think the resolution is probably easier for us, but I think we can also have a discussion at the retreat. Okay, I wanted to talk to you all about this a resolution, and I've asked the city manager to share a little bit of information. I've always felt really conflicted about when things happen internationally, like how do we engage? What does it look like for us to speak out? When do we speak out? And as a person who comes from India and Pakistan and Muslims and so many other cultures, it's always been a little bit of a stretch. So we've never really talked about a policy around what it takes to bring resolutions to this group. And so I wanted the city manager to at least give you all a heads up. The community in the city of Beaverton is a strong community. It's very diverse, and the Iranian community has asked us to consider adopting some sort of a resolution around, either solidarity towards the cause around what's happening, and or potentially even going farther. I want to be thoughtful that this is coming kind of from left field for y'all, and it's kind of our first time going down this road. So I would just say, like, as a Muslim woman who really values the rights of women and wants to show that my solidarity and my support to Iranian people, I'd like us to consider adopting some kind of resolution. I'm happy to partner with the city manager and or one or two counselors to help put together some language, and open to whatever thoughts Jenny and or the attorney might have, or thoughts that you all might have as well.
So we've not as this body taken on a resolution like this, but this council in its entirety has. In the past, when we've taken on geopolitical issues, it's generally bringing in, and I think Alexis is gone, but Alexis has been the kind of person that's facilitated this and making sure that we have like Iranian people weighing in on it, not just counselors, which I think I would be inclined to support. Maybe not 3 counselors doing this work, since none of us are that, but maybe Counselor Hassan, and making sure we bring in some people to make sure that what we're saying is accurate. I would be inclined to support a resolution in support of their cause, but I think speaking out against the government might be too far for me to agree with as the mayor, but I think supporting the cause in our community here, I'm all about that. Anyone else have thoughts? Council President.
Thank you. No, I'm looking forward to our rules and procedures stuff, because I know we're still navigating, like, how do we respond? How do we not respond? So hopefully we can come up with some guidance and make this part like easier for us to navigate. Thank you, Mayor, for helping facilitate us getting to consensus on things. I also thank you, Parisa and Layla, for reaching out to me. I would also be in support of a resolution. Also, I love the idea of having, perhaps the Free Iran PDX group involved in drafting of the resolution.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question? Because Mayor, you mentioned working with a group. So obviously the Free Iran PDX group has reached out to us. In theory, would they work with the city manager? Or like, Jenny, what are your thoughts on that? Because
they would not. So the stakeholder you're talking about, we would connect with them and we would have staff work with them. We'd also want to bring in, as the mayor said, some of our resources and cultural inclusion, potentially others in the community, just to make sure that we're doing something that's not offensive. And the only other thing that would be really helpful if the council is so inclined is if we could get some consensus around wanting to support the cause versus making any language statements that would show any kind of against the government. So that would really help with the tone if we could generally get some consensus from the council on that. There's a number of resolutions. One was shared with the council just to get a sense of the language, but there's plenty of opportunities working with the group that you cite, Councilor Hassan, and then other resolutions that they have actually been involved in throughout various states, one being California, which is the one that you had provided as an example. Thanks.
Councilor Duggar.
Just real quick, just want to voice my support for Councilor Hassan. I completely agree. I think this is a great resolution, particularly as we start to navigate council resolutions and start to put, our toe in the water there. I think this is a good one to lead on. I agree with the mayor too. I think we should include particularly the organizations that have reached out to us. I think that's a good starting point, and I'm fully in support of this. Thanks.
Councilor Tivnan.
Thanks. I echo Councilor Duggar's comments and in support of what Councilor Hassan has brought forward. I also wonder if there's an opportunity for the Diversity Advisory Board to play a role in this, or the Human Rights Advisory Commission. Seems like we've got a lot of folks that are volunteering for the city, some who have lived experience coming from Iran. So maybe that's something else to also investigate.
When we have done resolutions of this nature in the past, we have run them both through DAB and HRAC through cultural inclusion, so they often oversee both. Given sometimes that we want to speak quickly, which is what I think we're doing here, lining those meetings up might be challenging. That's why I think cultural inclusion and taking a lead could help with that. And if it creating what we've done in the past is a subcommittee of HRAC and DAB, so we didn't have to wait for it to come to the full board because of timing. So I think that would be a staff could bring a couple of those people from both boards in and work on it together. Councilor Kimmy.
Yes, I would like to support also Councilor Hassan's suggestion regarding the resolution, but then I do also agree with Mayor Beatty regards to the wording, where we need to find out we need to be careful what we say on the resolution if we are not really offensive to the government, because this happened in Korea a few years ago, where some of the Korean community members were upset, but the majority of the Korean community members were not upset with the Korean government. So there is a delicate wording that we need to play. So I'll have city manager really take a look at that, interview everybody who's involved, and find out appropriate wording for the resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Hassan, does that get where you're hoping this would go?
Yeah, I think I heard mostly to show our support for this community locally, and I don't have super strong opinions on where the language comes from. And just for context, I was offering to help with the language to be thoughtful of staff, because I don't want to put so much on staff, but this is something our community really wants. So I was just trying to make that happen. So thanks, Council. I appreciate it.
Right, any other council items? City manager, any staff items?
Yes, Mayor, just one real quick announcement. I wanted to let the community and the council know that I filled one of two of our assistant city manager positions. And I'm happy to announce that Dan Weinhammer will be the new assistant city manager. In the history of the city, Dan, as you know, has been serving in an interim capacity and serving the city well. And so we're really excited to have his transition be one that is permanent. So when you see him, please be sure to give him a shout out and a congratulations. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we are on to consent agenda tonight. Consent is typically routine items that the council has seen before, or contractual items that we are authorizing either the mayor or the city manager to sign on behalf of council. Council reads these prior to the meeting. They have opportunities to ask questions about agenda items or pull it from consent. We've received no request to pull items from consent tonight. So with that, Council President, consent agenda, please.
Yes, Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as seen in the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Duggar. Any discussion on the agenda tonight? Councillor Hassan?
Yeah, we have such a busy agenda, but I do want to make sure I kind of share some of this. I know that we decided to go ahead and fund the nonprofit incubator at the $1 million in the federal legislative framework. And I want to just share a little bit of perspective on the background of this incubator so that everyone kind of knows where it's all coming from. With our newest counselors joining, I think it's also important to help them understand where a lot of this came from. It was brought up casually in some conversations, and initially I'd shared some of my concerns, and those concerns are like, my auntie who has a garage with all the clothes and the things that they receive for when new refugees come, or the WhatsApp chat that y'all know about that has 200 people that show up with community stuff and really help each other out. And I think the challenge I continue to have with the nonprofit incubator is how are we really ensuring that we center communities of color in some of our most harmed communities. That said, we are going down this route and I want to support that. But my ask of this council is when we continue to make federal legislative framework priorities in the future, are we asking the questions? Whose voice are we listening to? Whose voice is being left out? Are we centering racial justice, racial equity? And how do we continue to center those discussions? I want to put my name out there. If you ever want to talk with me, I've got some very, very close lived experience around what solutions some of our communities of color would like to see from us. I'd love for us to think about things like participatory budgeting and other things that we've sort of casually talked about, but maybe never had the bandwidth to discuss. So my ask in 2024, when we work on our federal legislative agenda, that maybe we build a little bit more time, and maybe the city manager can help us with that around what our community really might want us to be doing. Not to say that nonprofit incubator isn't one of those things, but ensuring that we continue to center racial justice and racial equity in those conversations. Thank you.
Councillor Teeter.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make a quick comment about the nonprofit incubator too. There's some conversation a couple weeks ago on City Council, and Councillor Kimmy shared that it sounded like the Oregon Startup Center hadn't been super familiar or up to speed with the grant application process or aware that the funding was coming through. And I just wanted to share that I had some similar conversations with with them and people in the community. So I think moving forward, like we've got to make sure our communication as council and city and the nonprofits and organizations that we're partnering with is very clear throughout the entire process so that we're not catching people off guard. But I just wanted to support Councilor Kimmy with what he said 2 weeks ago.
Awesome. I do want to clarify, they knew we were writing the grant application. They were involved in it from the beginning. So I'm not sure where the impetus of that is coming from, but I want the community to know we didn't write in a partner agency into a federal ask without talking to them. That is just not what happened. So I want to make sure we're happy to help you guys have conversations, but they were a part of the initial grant funding around the requests that we were doing. So I'm not sure where this is coming from, that they didn't know we were doing this. I've heard it twice and it's inaccurate. Okay, any other comments tonight? With that, or will the recorder take the roll?
Mayor, who seconded the motion?
Councilor Duggar.
He moved the motion. The seconder?
No, the council president moved the motion.
Oh.
Councilor Duggar seconded it.
Councilor Duggar.
Yes.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes.
Councilor Hassan.
Yes.
Councilor Kimmy.
Yes.
Councilor Teeter.
Yes.
Councilor Tivnan.
Yes.
Mayor Beatty.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, so we are on to our first presentation of the evening, Agenda Bill 23021, Update the Facilities Master Plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. This is Dan Weinheimer, Assistant City Manager. And just wanted to give you a quick preview of this presentation, which is mostly going to be delivered by our amazing consultant team. But the Facility Master Plan is one of the Council's work plan projects and is a long project. So we wanted to have a couple touch points along the way to be able to connect back as we were getting feedback on the work. So this is one of those touch points. The project was initially budgeted in 21-22 in that fiscal year. And so it's been a long time coming to this point, but we wanted to round back to our last touch point was March of 2022. And some of you may not have been part of that conversation. So this presentation will sum up from our consultant team from Makers and LRS, what they've seen so far and some of the assessments that they've been able to make of our facilities and the various sites that we own and or rent. And so really just hoping to kind of give you the information, get a little bit of feedback and continue to move forward. So if you have additional questions, we're happy to take those offline as well. But I will stop talking now and hand it over to Julie, I think, with the Makers team.
We are delighted to be here to present our findings for the first major step of the project, needs assessment. A little bit about our agenda today. We are going to quickly remind you of the overall purpose and goals of the project, give you a summary of your facility portfolio and the major findings of our needs assessment. That's really the core of today's presentations. Give you a little bit of a preview of what we found at the visioning workshop and where we'll be focused in the next steps. So why spend resources, thought, and time on this kind of planning? City facilities are not often top of mind, and over time with subtle underfunding and them not being front and center, they can deteriorate. They can be aging, in need of repair. They can become very expensive to maintain and more difficult to use over time as they are not keeping pace with modern city services and operations. Very often we see facilities that are undersized to serve a growing community. They can be in the wrong location. They themselves can be vulnerable to natural disasters or emergencies, or not be well positioned to help the city respond to serve the community when a natural disaster hits. So this project intends to help the city determine the best course of action to address your near-term, most critical issues, highest priority needs. But it also, and maybe more importantly, helps you proactively plan and budget to meet the longer-term needs of your city and your community over time. Another feature of this kind of planning is that because you're taking a look at your entire portfolio and you're thinking strategically about how to meet your needs and how to best invest your dollars, it helps you maximize the investment benefits, leverage your existing assets, start to build partnerships where you need them, and support things like flexible design to be able to evolve as conditions change. A quick overview of our project schedule. We spent the first chunk of time really getting to know your operations and your portfolio. Needs assessment and visioning and meeting with leadership culminated at the end of last year. We are just launching, and with your head nod today, ready to dive full force into our alternatives phase, where we'll develop different solutions to meet your needs, evaluate them, review them with leadership, and then come back to you with our draft recommendations and early thoughts on what will comprise your master plan towards the end of May. Last stage, going through December, we'll be working heavily on phasing, financing, what projects should be first priorities, and how will the whole plan be feasible and reasonable for your city.
I'm going to kick off the needs assessment overview with a facility portfolio overview. What is the scope of this project? We are focused primarily on the 12 city-owned facilities or sites. So these are 7 key city-operated facilities, your administrative spaces, court, library, police, operations, as well as 5 facilities that are either leased out or operated by others, like the PCRA or the Friends of the Library House. There are 3 additional properties that the city leases for their use, including a surface parking lot, some storage, and the library branch. So that is the universe and the focus of this facilities master plan. We'll point out that the facilities master plan is not intended to address the water process sites, so distribution sites, pump stations, that kind of thing. There are 9 of those, and those are out of scope for this effort, as well as bureau properties and a potential future multicultural center. Very high-level summary of the needs assessment findings. You'll see on the right of the slide, we have the key owned and leased facilities. Then their high-level rating for condition and function, good, fair, poor, really simple. And then the bar on the far right indicates the relative size of each of these facilities. So you can see the Beaverton building has the longest bar, that's the greatest square footage. Good news, your recent investments in the Public Safety Center and the PCRA are going to meet the condition and functional needs for those facilities for at least 25 years. You have a few facilities that are in need of investment to address condition issues, namely the Griffith Building, the Operations Center, the City Library, and some of the smaller facilities that are leased out to third parties. Unfortunately, most of the major city facilities do not function well today. The 2 facilities in particular that are most in need of investment and attention for both condition and functional reasons are the Public Works Operations Center and the Griffith Building. To get into a little bit more detail, we'll start with Public Works Operations. So these are the crews that are maintaining streets, water, sewers, maintaining city fleet, right-of-way vegetation. There are about 100 staff today that report to the operations center on the east side of town. That's about a quarter of the city's workforce. So this is a substantial operation. And facilities at that location are really not up to snuff. So today, about 60% more building area is needed. And these are space-intensive functions. We're talking about big equipment, a lot of supply storage that you need to have at hand. So 20% more site area is estimated to be needed just to meet today's needs. Public Works operations is 24/7 operations, especially under snow ice conditions or other natural disasters. They are first responders, and the Operations Center lacks appropriate emergency response crew spaces. We've heard stories of folks sleeping in their car while they're working 24-hour shifts to address road conditions. The 160th Service Yard, which is on the west side of town, you can see on the little key map, this is a laydown storage yard, so overflow material storage basically, and you can see it's not very proximate to the operations center. Unfortunately, there are pretty limited acquisition opportunities to meet the space needs crunch for an industrial function like operations, especially in urbanized areas. We see this all over the place. However, there is some potential to expand use at 160th and potentially in certain water properties, particularly the Maverick property. At the Griffith Building, so Griffith Building functions, court, facilities, and property management. So some operations type shops functions, as well as ITSD and some ancillary city attorney's office functions, record storage, and dispute resolution. This building is pretty inappropriate for the functions there today, especially court and facilities. The building itself, the site is vulnerable to flooding, and the building is vulnerable to seismic risks. It's pretty underutilized since police moved out into their new facility. So unfortunately, there's no quick fix here. So retaining the building entails a pretty significant investment to address condition issues and vulnerabilities, but so does finding new facilities for the functions that are still there today. The Beaverton building contains the remaining sort of office-based administrative city functions. And those spaces are pretty close to being at capacity, though there is an additional approximately 30% of the building is leased out to third parties currently. Engineering and public engagement have the most pressing needs today, but really most of the city functions currently in that building are going to outgrow their space within the next 10 years. Relocating to some functions to Griffith to make some room is an option, but it would require investment, and it may split up functions that prefer to be co-located. The Beaverton building, though, it may be adequate to meet 30-year needs. So looking at this chart on the right, the purple bar represents the square footage at the Beaverton building. The blue bar represents the square footage at the Griffith building. So if you take off the Beaverton leases and terminate those leases, you relocate the sort of operations type functions like facilities or reprographics, and locate a new facility for court. The remaining functions that are currently distributed between those two buildings have a reasonable chance of being a good fit for the existing building. So that's something that would need further analysis, but just at a high level first blush, that is an option to potentially consider. City has a few other needs. You have acquired a new warming cooling shelter that is in great condition. So nice job finding a good building that's ready to go. It's not quite ready to go, I misspoke, because it does need an investment. So it still needs funds for the build out. The city's server room and IT vault that runs communications infrastructure at Griffith, they're vulnerable to flooding and seismic hazards. And there's space to relocate the city server room to the Public Safety Center. And there's the opportunity to relocate the IT vault as well and resolve that vulnerability. But that requires, again, funding and multi-agency coordination. The library has some expected costs just to maintain that building in good condition, regular systems replacements, and there may be some future need for a branch library or other types of ways of providing library services. And finally, city is growing quickly, especially in the Southwest. Substations or other facilities may be needed further down the road, not tomorrow, but further down the road to serve that growth, especially if annexation also comes into the picture. So for an effort like this, we really focus on what are the big decisions that need to be made that have knock-on effects and help you set a course for making smart investments in your facilities. The first that we've identified for this project is, what is the best move for the Griffith Building? Is that a facility that the city should invest in for long-term use? What is the best solution to meet the operational needs of public works? And then how can the city of Beaverton position itself to anticipate future growth and be ready to provide excellent service to that future city? So back in November, our team conducted 2 visioning workshops. The first was with public works and city operations types functions, and the second was with citywide, mainly at the director level. So the goals, so before we wrap up today, we're just going to share kind of the high points, major outcomes from those 2 workshops. For both of them, the goal was to get everybody on the same page and have everyone understand different department needs and planning considerations and constraints. We explored some options to address those key facility decisions and honed in on options that seemed most promising and most likely to meet needs for analysis in the upcoming alternatives analysis phase. For the citywide workshop, to meet the city's office space needs, we heard that there was pretty good support for terminating some or all of the current third-party leases in the Beaverton building to provide space for future growth. However, there was very limited interest in renovating Griffith for expanded administrative space. For court, somewhat similarly, there was majority support for renovating unspecified leased or purchased building and less interest in renovating Griffith to meet court needs. However, though it's worth noting that transit adjacency is a very key location consideration for court, and the location of Griffith really works well. There was a general desire to increase the quantity and accessibility of public meeting spaces, and echoing what we heard during the needs assessment data collection, additional library offerings and a police substation or multiple police substations are anticipated well down the road as a long-term need. For the operations workshop, water, storm, and sewer crews were the most urgently in need. Though there is preference for consolidating functions on a single site as there are today, there was support, understanding that there's a space crunch. There's support for exploring a number of solutions, including multi-site strategies, use of water property to include other operations functions, relocating some public works engineering staff from the Beaverton building to co-locate them with the operations crews that they collaborate with, and similarly, facilities, reprographics, or other not strictly office functions, and taking those and co-locating them with a new public works operations investment. So with that, we have concluded the needs assessment phase by briefing you tonight. And we hope to get going in earnest on the alternatives phase, working with city staff and the project team to identify solutions to facility challenges that are both functional and fiscally appropriate for the city of Beaverton. We hope to see you next around May of 2023. And we look forward to reporting out on our alternatives analysis findings then. Thank you very much.
Councilor Duggar?
Was Councilor Kivnon first? I can't tell.
Is it possible to turn off the PowerPoint so we can see each other again? Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I just had one question and one confirmation question. So I'll start with the confirmation question first. As part of the alternatives study, is there any benefit cost work that goes in there to talk about what the lift would be to remodel portions of Griffith or get it up to speed versus going into a lease, if we can find one, a leased or purchase building? Will you be, and not, that was just an example, but for Public Works, for everything else, are you going to be doing that as part of that report?
Absolutely. That's a core part of that phase, is
Great.
not just looking at the functionality of the options, but what is the cost trade-off?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And then the second one was, I'm sure the nature of this work has changed a little since the pandemic. And can you talk a little bit about assumptions around remote work and how those factor into headcount within our buildings, and if that could potentially play some kind of a near-term or even a long-term solution in helping us manage our space?
You bet. So this comes up a lot, as you can imagine, with the discussion of office space. And the purpose of a project like this is we're not test fitting, we're not putting bodies in seats. We're looking at what is the big move. We're setting the direction for the big moves. Is this building plus or minus going to meet your needs or not? And what we have found running the numbers, looking at really extreme scenarios. What if everybody is desk sharing, everybody's one-to-one desk sharing, or 50% of your staff are fully remote? It doesn't move the needle enough to change the foundational decision. And so these policy questions around remote work and how staff come together in physical space, those are certainly decisions to be made in a discussion for leadership to make. But when it comes to making planning level decisions, as we do for a strategic facilities plan, you can get hung up on trying to resolve that question today. And what we found is it's not essential to do that in order to get good outcomes and good decisions.
Okay, and just a follow up to that, if there's some way to visualize that, like some sort of infographic that demonstrates that, I think at some point down the road, as we're making probably some hard trade-off decisions on what we're going to do, since it's coming up with policy makers in their conversations with you, it's probably going to come up with the public. If there's anything that you have that you can incorporate into just help describe why or why not it impacts things, that would be helpful. Or if there's an online resource that already exists out there, I'm happy to find it. But just something to help really explain why, because I see a lot of people pointing to that as being the solution to a lot of problems, and it sounds like you're saying that's not exactly the case. So, okay, thank you.
Great feedback.
Only add just a 2-second that as a strategy to address near-term space pressures and or as a strategy to allow for a certain space allocated to a department to be a little bit flexible to accommodate additional growth over time, it can be a really important component. So Cecilia's right, not doesn't move the needle on big long-term decisions, but is one of many tools we have to recommend making best use of space.
Councilor Duggar.
Thanks, Mayor. I had the same question, so I'll skip that as Councilor Tivnon, but kind of as a follow-up to that, are there specific areas, right? Like I'm thinking Public Works probably isn't going to be any remote or very little remote, right? Like, so are we at least thinking as far as like the different types of employees and the different job functions on what the potential for remote work would be? Because I do think there's an opportunity in office workers. You know, I see it in my role at Nike. They've stopped constructing. Why? Because there's not, you know, you can manage some things, but for facilities workers, you cannot. So are we at least thinking in those terms as far as like, hey, maybe we can, you know, prioritize non-remote work eligible workplaces? That make sense? Are we thinking in those terms? Because I think that would be really helpful for this council. Because I know Public Works needs, you know, they immediately needs more space and they can't work remote, right?
Counselor, it may be easier for me to answer that question as opposed to the consultants. But obviously, we are looking at policies and what we're going to do long term. But we've not made any decisions whatsoever on permanency of remote work, and so we're conscious of the fact that there are some inequities, like you're mentioning with Public Works or other special disciplines that can't work remotely. But at this time, we're definitely considering options, especially when it comes to space and how we might have that short-term fix, but nothing's been decided yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Teeter.
Yes, I had some similar comments as Councillor Duggar and Councillor Tignan, so I'll leave those about remote work for them. The lens that I'm coming to this from, and to a lot of these conversations from, is regarding the climate impact to some of these decisions and the fiscal impact, and making sure we're making sustainable decisions for both. So as we keep going forward in these conversations, maybe if we're talking about like renovating a building versus demolishing and reconstructing a new building, or selling it or trading it with somebody else in return for a different building, like if we could see some analysis of the climate impact of those decisions, I think that would be another perspective I would like to see. And then for fiscal impact, how much money do we bring in each year from the Beaverton leases?
I think it depends is probably the answer right now, because with COVID, there have been fewer of the e-suites occupied, but I think it's in the order of about 300 to 600,000.
Okay, yeah, to me that feels like a substantial chunk, although I would be supportive, at least right now, of using that space for City of Beaverton employees. But if we're thinking about fiscal impact, just analysis or an analysis or a chart of some of that trade-off too would be helpful too. Thank you.
Councillor Hesson.
Hello, thank you. So many smart people before me, so I don't have to talk about remote policy and I don't have to talk about climate and sustainability. I think what I'm trying to understand is, so you've given us this presentation. I look at slide 18, which is you're going to go through an alternatives review and you're going to do alternatives workshop and preferred alternative selection. Is that with staff specifically?
Yes, that would be with the city's project team and likely department directors.
Okay, perfect. I mean, I don't have to echo it, but like understanding like what it means to terminate leases, right? Like what are those impacts look like? I do want to make sure that we're able to keep a close pulse on like the decisions that are being made about this. I know Bureau is not included on this, but I just want to say like, should we be thinking about where Bureau could or could not play a role in any of this? It's just something that was on my mind. So thank you, previous counselors, for great thoughts and comments.
I'll close out tonight with just a couple comments, since I know this is intended to be a presentation, but one of the things that I still feel like it's not great, it hasn't been answered in this particularly, was one of the reasons council was so interested and sent this back multiple times for bid and review, was to look at who gets space in government buildings for free. And then the policy around deciding who gets space in government buildings for free and understanding which space we have to give. And so I still think, to me, that's a missing piece that I would like to understand more. I mean, part of why we even trended down this, and now it feels like 4 or 5 years ago since we started this conversation, and we're just now seeing it. And it's just a good reminder of council of like, we asked for things and sometimes it's 5 years later we start to get the information. But when we start talking about how we utilize our city spaces, like not only for our own employees, but like for the community, that's a piece that's important for me, for us to continue to have that conversation. Okay, do you have everything you need from the council tonight?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on to our public hearing section. If you want to follow along, because I know sometimes it gets confusing, the city attorney sent out a script, and so I don't memorize them. I literally read them so council can follow along and make sure that we are doing things in the way we're supposed to. So the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on resolution adopting updated and restated permit fee schedules for the Building Planning and Site Development Division pursuant to Beaverton Code 8.02.040 and 9.05.032 and Beaverton Development Code 10.0.55, repealing resolution number 4795. Before we begin, I'll ask the city attorney to explain how people can participate in this hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I'm Robin McIntyre, Assistant City Attorney. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. If you've joined the meeting by phone, you can enter *9 to let the city recorder know you wish to speak. Alternatively, if you've joined the meeting online, you can let the city recorder know you wish to speak by clicking the raise hand feature. After each person speaks, council members may ask questions of the speaker.
Thank you. Is there a staff presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I do have a short presentation to share. So I am sharing my screen now. Oops, hang on. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I'm Anna Slatinsky, the Planning Division Manager in the Community Development Department here in Beaverton. And I'm here to briefly go through the development permit fee update that is here for council decision and public hearing tonight. The changes proposed are minor changes to the fee schedules for land use and building fees. No changes are proposed to site development fees at this time. Note that there is an annual inflation increase that will take effect automatically on February 1st. No council action is needed to implement that update. To provide some background, since we have some new council members, I'm going to very briefly touch on the fee, pretty significant fee update that was approved by council back in June 2022 and took effect in July. That update reflected an analysis that looked at the fiscal policy related to fees for development, impacts on the general fund, especially, as well as the ability of the building fund to operate independently as required by state law. We took into account service levels, the high level of customer service that is provided to applicants and community members in the development process, and consistency, really aiming to ease the gradual increase of fees to reflect costs rather than make large increases less frequently. The council adopted approach included some significant increase to building permit fees and land use application fees, targeting 100% cost recovery and 75% cost recovery respectively. No increases were made to site development fees at that time. In addition, an annual inflation adjustment pegged to an index was approved by council, and that will apply automatically each year, again, to prevent big jumps in fees that happen periodically and make it more possible for the city to know that its costs are covered. The proposed fee update before you this evening includes a few new fees. These are for the reimbursement district application fee related to the reimbursement district enabling code, which is also on the agenda for tonight. It includes establishing a fee for the new mass shelter land use application, which will be before council in February. That fee would take effect only if council approves that new land use application. And it includes a new fee for the modification of non-conforming land use application, which is actually a land use application that already exists but did not have a fee associated with it in the fee schedule. The building fee schedule has some errors that are corrected and some fees that are being reduced actually to make sure that the erosion control fees on the building fee schedule are consistent with the erosion control fees on the site development fee schedule. And then for planning, in addition to the new application fees, there are some wording tweaks. There's an obsolete application that's being deleted, A footnote being added for more detail, and again, some Scrivener's errors being corrected. Per state law, the proposal was made available on the Beaverton website. There will be an opportunity tonight for folks to comment on fees. And just to note that since building fees are not proposed to increase, there is no special notice required to the Oregon State Building Code Division. The recommendation of staff is that council approve the proposed development fee update. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, I don't have my home computer with the mouse. Okay, council, this is the time where you would ask staff any questions about the presentation. Okay. Seeing none, I'll now take public comment. City Recorder, is there anyone wishing to speak on this tonight?
No, Mayor, we do not have anyone online.
Okay. There appears to be no members of the public who wish to comment on this matter tonight. So I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that the council adopt a resolution adopting updated and restated permit fee schedules for the building, planning, and site development divisions pursuant to Beaverton Code 8.02.040 and 9.05.032 and Beaverton Development Code 10.55, repealing resolution number 4795.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, will the recorder call the roll?
Counselor Tivnon.
Yes.
Counselor Duggar.
Yes.
Counselor Teeter.
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy.
Yes.
Counselor Hassan.
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg.
Yes.
Mayor Beatty.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted 7-0.
Okay, this is the time and place for a public hearing on an ordinance adding Beaverton Code Chapter 3.03 reimbursement districts relating to the procedures to create and administer reimbursement districts. I now call the public meeting to order. Before we move on to the substance of the hearing, I will ask the city attorney to explain any legal, how people can participate in this meeting.
Hello, Robin McIntyre again, Assistant City Attorney. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. If you've joined the meeting by phone, you can enter *9 to let the city recorder know you wish to speak. Alternatively, if you've joined the meeting online, you can let the city recorder know you wish to speak by clicking on the raise hand feature. Each member of the public will have up to 3 minutes to speak. When you speak, please give your name and city of residence for the record. After each person is done speaking, council members may ask questions of the speaker. When all public comment has concluded, council members may ask staff or legal counsel any questions helpful to their decision regarding the proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, is there a staff presentation?
Yes, there is, Mayor. I'll share my screen now. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Brian Martin, a long-range planning manager. I'm here tonight to describe the proposal to add a section on reimbursement districts to the Beaverton Code. This code will enable developers for the city to apply for and the City Council to vote to create reimbursement districts. And this is a tool the city currently does not have. The question for you tonight is whether you want to approve the proposed amendments to Beaverton Code Chapter 3 related to reimbursement districts, which would add them as a tool the council could use to help fund infrastructure projects. A reimbursement district allows infrastructure, such as a traffic signal in this example, to be built by one party who later gets reimbursed from other parties who benefit from that new infrastructure. This is how it works in brief. Using the example diagram. In this case, the additional development on any of those 4 properties would necessitate the addition of a traffic signal to handle the additional automobile trips from the new development. The way this works now and the way it actually happened in South Beaver Mountain, for example, is that each property is required through conditions of approval on their land use application to build the signal because their development would trigger the need for it. But only the first developer to build and hit that trigger would pay for the whole signal. This means one developer pays the entire cost for infrastructure that benefits many properties. And because that cost is put on one property, that can sometimes make the development financially challenging or infeasible. If the city council chooses to approve the language for Chapter 3 for reimbursement districts, this scenario could play out differently. The first property owner to develop could ask the city council to establish a reimbursement district. If it were approved, and the city council must approve each and every reimbursement district, they would build and pay for the signal. Then when each of the green properties develops and starts to use the signal, they would pay to reimburse the orange property, which is the first one that built it and paid for it. So those green properties would basically pay their share of the cost. Reimbursement districts can be used for a variety of infrastructure, such as the ones listed on the screen. And it could be a tool that's would be useful in Cooper Mountain, which is our expansion area we're planning for right now, because there's a lot of infrastructure and a lot of properties in Cooper Mountain. Some of the specifics of the code regarding how the tool works. A developer, which could also include the city, would apply for the district. City staff, engineering and finance mostly, would prepare a report on behalf of the city manager with the project cost and the methodology for how costs are shared, meaning which property owner has to reimburse which amount. This report is reviewed with property owners in the proposed district, and the city council holds a public hearing and decides whether to establish the district. The council definitely does not have to establish it if they do not want to. Properties that benefit pay when they start using infrastructure. Often that's when they pull building permits. The draft code includes provisions for the city to charge an application fee, which we just approved in the previous action in the previous public hearing. And that would offset the cost of preparing the city manager's report. Districts would last 10 years, but the city council could approve 2 5-year extensions if they wish. After the district expires, no reimbursement districts are required. And the city can charge an administrative fee to cover costs of managing the district, which involves finance work and actually taking the money from the people paying the reimbursement and giving it to the initial developer who built the project in the first place. So this is just a note, this slide to say that we followed the proper procedures to propose this ordinance in Beaverton Code. We had 2 city council work sessions last year about the concept and the draft code. And the first reading was January 3rd. We shared information during the project with the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement and the Development Community. And we didn't hear a lot of comments about the draft code. People seem to, I think it made sense to have another tool. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance amending Chapter 3 of the Beaverton Code related to adding Chapter 3.03 for reimbursement districts. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Well, looks like we do have a question of staff tonight. Councilor Duggar.
Thanks, Brian. Question for you. I went over the documentation and maybe I missed it, but are we clear exactly what infrastructure? I saw your examples on the slide deck, but I didn't see any specific definitions in the proposed agenda bill documentation. And my question is, like, do we have that, and did I just miss it? Or number 2, can we have that? Because in my mind, something like a community garden may be an infrastructure, but asking others to share in that, maybe not the right policy. And I know we could individually determine that at every single application for a reimbursement district, but at the end of the day, are we clear on what these things can be used for?
Yes, Councilor, thanks for the question. I would direct you to the first page of the code, the definition of public improvement. It lists the different things like sanitary sewer, stormwater, streets, water, parks, trails, and public utility undergrounding. And the rest of the code refers to public improvements. So that is where how that list gets referred to.
Okay, so it is just these items plus the additional public improvement already outlined in city code. Am I understanding you correctly?
I think so. Yeah, that list is the things that are eligible.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that then. Thank you.
Councillor Hassan?
I was just going to say, I've seen Brian talk about this for a really long time. So I just want to commend his work because I feel like he's been very methodical and I've seen this definitely more than the times I felt was listed. So thanks, Brian.
Okay. Okay, City Recorder, is there anyone wishing to speak on the ordinance?
No, Mayor, we have no one online.
Okay, there appears to be no members of the public who wish to make comments on this matter tonight. I will now close the public hearing. The council may either adopt the proposed ordinance or take other action. If other action is proposed, the motion must include specific direction as to what other action. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move that the council adopt the city ordinance embodying an Agenda Bill 23023, an ordinance adding Beaverton Code Chapter 3.03 reimbursement districts relating to the procedures to create and administer reimbursement districts.
Is there a second? Oh my gosh, I literally don't know because I was looking at a document. Did it go to Councillor Tivnon? I'm giving it to Councillor Tivnon tonight. Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Councillor Tivnon. Any more discussion on this? Okay, and so this is like a really easy one that we're doing, but just as a reminder, since we are going through this, we would ask questions after the staff presentation to get clarity on what was happening, not talk about how we were going to vote. So if this is controversial and you were going to vote against it, this is the time where you would talk about why you were going to vote that way. I know this is an easy one, but just to kind of get our muscles going for future ones that won't be so easy. Okay, with that, I am going to close the public hearing. I already did that. Okay. So we need a vote. We do need a vote.
Councillor Hassan?
Yes.
Councillor Tivnon?
Yes.
Councillor Duggar?
Yes.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Prigg?
Yes.
Councillor Teeter?
Yes.
Councillor Kimmy?
Yes.
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted 7-0.
Okay, we got another one. Tonight we are holding a public hearing regarding application number ANX 2022-0005, CPA 2022-0010, and ZMA 2022-0009 to annex property and adjacent streets into the city assigned the RMC zoning code and lower density neighborhood designation on the comprehensive plan map for 140th Southwest 137th Avenue and 170th Southwest 137th Avenue. I now call to order the public hearing. Before we move into any substance, I will ask the city attorney to cover any preliminary legal matters.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, Robin McIntyre, Assistant City Attorney. I have a bit of a longer pre-hearing statement this time. This is a land use hearing for our newer counselors, and there are some statutorily required procedural statements that must be made. So bear with me as I go through this pre-hearing statement. The hearing will proceed as follows. After the preliminary legal matters, city staff will make a presentation. Then members of the public will have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes each. Finally, there will be a time for response or rebuttal to the public testimony by staff. Council members may ask questions of staff, applicants, or anyone else who testifies. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. If you've joined the meeting by phone, you can enter *9 to let the city recorder know you wish to speak. Alternatively, if you've joined the meeting online, you can let the city recorder know you wish to speak by clicking on the raise hand features. Now I will cover the preliminary legal matters. The applicant bears the burden of proving that the applications are consistent with the Beaverton Development Code, Comprehensive Plan, and any applicable Beaverton Code provision. The criteria that must be addressed in this hearing are Metro Code Section 3.09.045, Beaverton Development Code Chapter 40.97, and Beaverton Comprehensive Plan Section 1.5. Any testimony that speakers present must be directed at these criteria or at some other criteria in the code or comprehensive plan, which the speaker believes should apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to allow the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. In addition, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Only those who submit written comments or give oral testimony will have standing to appeal this decision. So this time I'd like to ask if any of the council members wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias. I see none, so let the record show there were no responses. Do any council members wish to report any site visits or ex parte contacts? Okay, I see none. Let the record show that there were no responses. Does any member of the audience wish to question the impartiality or ex parte disclosures of any council member? And since we had nobody who had any, but if there was any member of the public who believed that there was one, now's the time to speak. Okay, let the record show no responses. Does anyone wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the council to hear this matter? Okay, let the record show there were no responses. Mayor, that concludes the legal matters. You can proceed with the hearing.
All right, we'll move forward with the staff presentation.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Brittany Gaeta. I'm an Associate Planner in the Community Development Department. This evening, I am providing staff's presentation on the 137th Avenue Annexation, Comprehensive Plan, and Zoning Map Amendments requests. These are application numbers ANX 2022-0005, CPA 2022-0010, and ZMA 2022-0009. Staff has two questions for the City Council this evening. The first is if the City Council supports the proposed annexation, and the second is if the City Council supports the proposed comprehensive plan amendment and zoning map amendment requests. So the proposed annexation requests to annex two parcels located at 140 and 170 Southwest 137th Avenue. The annexation was owner initiated and both tax lots are currently developed with single detached homes and accessory structures. This annexation also includes rights of way of Southwest 137th Avenue and also Southwest Linda Lane to connect this site to the city boundary, which is located along Southwest Murray Boulevard. In the image here, the city boundary is the bold blue line. These portions of the right of way were identified for annexation for two reasons. First, annexing the right-of-way along with private property will reduce portions of unincorporated Washington County inside of the larger city boundary. And second, annexing complete segments of roads rather than just half-street portions abutting individual parcels will make ownership and maintenance responsibilities for these roads and utilities within them clearer for jurisdictions. And since 100% of the property owners and 100% of the registered electors have consented to this annexation, it may be processed as an expedited annexation according to the Metro Code. If approved, these properties and rights-of-way will be withdrawn from the Tualatin Valley Water District, from the Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, and the Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District. These areas would also be added to the Five Oaks Triple Creek Neighborhood Association Committee. For the comprehensive plan and zoning map amendment requests, they are associated with the proposed annexation. Currently, the subject parcels are zoned Washington County R5, and the requested CPA and ZMA propose to apply the lower density neighborhoods designation to the land use map and the residential mixed C zoning designation to the zoning map for both parcels and the abutting right-of-way to the center line of Southwest 137th Avenue, seen in red on the image here. These designations most closely correspond to Washington County's land use and zoning designations, which are reflected in the Beaverton Comprehensive Plan, Table 1 of Section 1.5.2, which is maintained pursuant to the Washington County Beaverton Urban Planning Area Agreement. And since the proposal is consistent with Table 1, the request qualifies as non-discretionary, annexation-related, comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments. And as documented in the annexation staff report and also the comprehensive plan and zoning map amendment staff report and the associated exhibits with both, the requests meet all applicable approval criteria. First, the proposed annexation meets the criteria of the Metro Code for an expedited annexation. And the comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments meet the thresholds to qualify as non-discretionary, and they meet the applicable approval criteria of the Beaverton Comprehensive Plan and the Development Code. Therefore, staff recommends that the City Council adopt an ordinance annexing 2 parcels of land, the adjacent right-of-way of 137th Avenue, and additional right-of-way of portions of Southwest 137th Avenue and Southwest Linda Lane. Staff also recommends that the City Council adopt an ordinance applying the lower density neighborhoods land use designation and the residential mixed-C zoning district to the subject parcels and the abutting right-of-way. And this concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Questions from the council? Councilor Duggar.
Thanks for the presentation. So help me understand a little bit. I'm a little nervous, not around the houses, but around annexing the right-of-way, the street. Does that require us to maintain the street in any way? I also, when I look at Google Street View, I see no sidewalks. I see things like that. And are we on the hook for that eventually? Help me understand that a little bit more. Like, what are our requirements for that street?
Of course. Thank you for the question, Councilor Duggar. Yes, so by annexing those areas of rights of way, Beaverton would be on the hook for the maintenance of those roadways. Theoretically, we could be on the hook for sidewalks as well. We typically require that new development, when it is proposed, construct sidewalks and other facilities. But if development did not occur and sidewalks were determined to be needed in that area, yes, Beaverton would be on the hook for those.
I have a couple follow-up questions, if that's okay, Mayor. Could we annex without doing the whole street? Is that a possibility legally, number one? I guess, yeah, I'll ask that one first.
Of course, thank you. And I'm going to defer to the Long Range Planning Manager, Brian Martin, for that question. Thank you.
Hi, Councilor. Brian Martin, Long Range Planning Manager. Yes, it is possible to annex the properties without the street. I believe they border the city on their east side in this case, so the street is optional. Just to answer a little bit more that you didn't ask, but the streets and sidewalks are usually provided with development. This city would basically have to decide to do a CIP project, to capital improvement project, to do the whole road. If the council wanted to do that, and it would kind of get sorted with the other priorities in the capital improvement program. Another benefit that we didn't describe with annexing the streets is we get the utilities along with them. Then if there is new development, the folks are actually getting city services and they would be annexed too. So it's another way that we can slowly fill in our holes in our boundary and get more folks, get a more regular boundary over time.
Okay. And my final question, thank you for that. What is the street cost maintenance program look like? I know that you mentioned capital improvements would come before this board or through the CIP process, but presumably that's in Jenny's will, right? Like not coming to this board. Like there is a cost to maintaining streets, and I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking 2 houses probably aren't going to pay for the maintenance of and just the maintenance alone of that street. And I have, just help me understand that cost if we know it.
I'm going to look through the record to see if there was a cost identified for maintenance of those areas. I do not remember seeing a specific number. Brian, do you happen to know if that information would have been included in the research?
I think Councillor Duggar is asking a more general question of like, how much does it cost us to maintain a street? Maybe not that specific one.
I see.
If I could just add some clarity. While I don't have the numbers, Councillor Duggar, in general, property tax dollars that you receive as a result of annexation or any other activity does not go to supporting your streets. It goes to other general fund services. About half of your general fund is comprised of property tax. Street maintenance and road is primarily funded through gas tax and through projects like that fund through MSTIF, things of that nature. So your property tax dollars really rarely go to your roads, which is why as we start having more budget conversations, we're going to be talking about how do we fund future infrastructure, not only our own and making sure that our pavement condition index stays where it is, but moving forward for future developments. Great example would be Cooper Mountain.
Yeah, no, I understand that the revenue sources. However, we would be adding, if I understand this correctly, we would be adding cost, right? Because we would be adding an obligation onto the city to maintain that we would not necessarily. Am I understanding that correctly? Like,
yes, and you would do that with any development in the city, whether it's commercial, residential, anything. So you're choosing to subsidize that cost basically, because unfortunately your property tax does not amount to the amount that you need for services.
Excellent. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Councillor Kimmy.
Just a quick question. So the owners of the residences later on decided to build ADA or some house in the back. Is that going to trigger them to build out the sidewalk and create reimbursement districts? Just wondering, I think the notion is that they want to be annexed to the city because they want to rebuild or create some kind of housing. So if that's the case, is that going to trigger them to build a sidewalk and develop the road? That's my question.
There, Honest Latinsky, Planning Division Manager. I'm gonna answer this question, Brittany and Brian, if you don't mind. So, Councilor Kimmy, you're asking whether future development on the site, what kind of investment that might be required along with that. And I think that there are some questions there we don't have super clear answers to because of recent changes around state law for middle housing and lower density residential development. Staff is actually in the process right now of considering options for things like requiring sidewalk improvements when there is an accessory dwelling unit proposed to be added, whether duplexes or triplexes or quadplexes or cottage clusters would be required, which is very, very much the subject of the housing options project that council approved over the summer. There are some complexities to that it's not the right time to go into right now. What I will say though is that when there is new development that increases the number of people using the transportation system, there is the potential for there to be improvements to that transportation system needed. Most often that would be making sure that the area directly in front of a property, such as the street and sidewalk, are up to standard. So the answer to your question is maybe those kinds of improvements would be required with future development. However, reimbursement districts are something that would only ever be established along with a separate application to council, and would not typically include an ordinary frontage like building out the street and sidewalk directly in front of a property. Those would be more typically for improvements above and beyond that, such as for major pieces of infrastructure, a bridge, an intersection, those kinds of things. So in the scenarios that you describe, a reimbursement district would be very unlikely to be established, but improvements to the street itself that abut the property might be required.
Just quick follow-up is that if somebody's trying to build accessory dwelling unit or duplex, those are small, they're not major developments. They just want to add some square footage to their house. It will be too burdensome for them to build out the sidewalk and all the infrastructure. I'm also glad to hear that the city staff is working on maybe amending it. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
I concur with Councilor Kimmy too, as we talk about missing middle housing. And then, you know, a lot of us have aging parents. We're trying to get them by. And I think, you know, building ADUs is incredibly expensive. That aside, I'm sitting here trying to think about a time we ever annexed housing like that without the street. Can you just clarify for me that who asked for the street to be included in this? Was it something we added? I can't imagine the homeowner asking us to adopt the street as well.
Mayor, hi, it's Brian Martin, Long Range Planning Manager again. The city added the street to the proposal. In the more distant past, we often would include the half street and zone the half street, and then assumed that would like fill in as we annex more properties. But in the past 5 years or so, we've made it a practice to, inside our urban planning area agreement with the county, where we have consent to annex the county roads, and we negotiated that with the county. So most county roads, we negotiated that with the county as part of the effort to fill in those holes in the city boundary. They understood that those should be in the city someday. That's kind of the direction we're trying to head. So since then, when we do an annexation, we do an analysis to see if adding some streets would help in that effort to fill in those holes, consistent with that agreement we have with the county and kind of the city council's approval of that direction at that time.
I'm just thinking about where I think Councilor Duggar might be going or thinking on his track tonight. Where would that, if we decided to annex the housing without the street, where does that put us at the relationship with the county? And not that we're beholden to that, but it's something for us to consider. We have a lot more annexations ahead of us, and I don't want to inadvertently cause, you know, tension between us and the county.
The urban planning area agreement gives us the option to annex and gives us consent to, but the county, I don't believe, there's nothing in there that says we're expected to or the county requires us to. It's our choice.
Okay. Any more questions of our staff?
I would just like to note that council is asking some really good questions about how the city approaches annexation, and I think it illustrates the large number of policy considerations that are involved in annexation. Annexation kind of policy in the long term, annexation strategy has been something that has been identified in the past as something that council would like staff to explore more fully and engage with council on. And so it is something that is for sure on our radar, of course, subject to the limitations and time and resources to follow up on all of those ideas.
Of course, and I would say it was the prerogative of the past council to be Beaverton for Beaverton's sake at every time. This council's weighing with a lot of financial decisions in our future, so every decision we make is through that lens. I do look forward to having a conversation around annexation. It is becoming very clear that we need to have one around this, and I know the city manager is currently working on what that would look like. With that, is there any public comment tonight, City Recorder?
No, Mayor, there's no one online to testify.
All right, making it easy on us tonight. There appears to be no members of the public who want to speak on this matter. We will move on to comments from staff. Does the staff or city attorney have any further comments or clarification regarding this application?
Mayor, if I just may make a quick statement.
Yes.
One of the things with adding the street is it does allow the city to annex more property. So, you know, we can't just annex islands. So having the street there would allow us to expand our boundary to all those properties touching the street.
Is that the case with these two houses?
See that I'm looking at the map and the two houses do appear to be bordering the city boundary already. So we don't have to have the street in order to annex these two properties. But if you were looking at the map, you'd see there are properties across the street on the other side, and there's some properties in between. Those could be annexed. Whereas if the street is not part of this annexation, some of those properties, they wouldn't be able to annex without adding the street to their annexation.
Of course, and we lovingly refer to that as cherry stemming annexation, which is prohibited for us to do that.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, does council have any questions for staff? Give another bite at the apple on this one. All right, seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. The council should first take up the annexation application and ordinance. Then if the annexation is approved, the council can consider the application ordinance for the zoning and comprehensive plan map amendments. For the annexation, the council may either approve the application and adopt the proposed ordinance or take other action. If other action is proposed regarding the ordinances, the motion must include specific direction as to what the other action is. Is there a motion related to the annexation application of this ordinance?
Yes, Mayor. I move to approve application ANX 2022-0005 and adopt an ordinance annexing two lots at 140 and 170 Southwest 137th Avenue, the adjacent right-of-way of Southwest 137th Avenue, and additional right-of-way of portions of Southwest 137th Avenue and Southwest Linda Lane. Withdrawing the properties and adjacent right-of-ways from the Tualatin Valley Water District, Washington County Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, and Washington County Urban Road Maintenance District, and adding the properties and adjacent rights-of-way to the Five Oaks Triple Creek Neighborhood Association Committee, ANX 2022-0005.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Councilor Sung. Is there any discussion? Councilor Duggar?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, if you guys couldn't already tell, I'm struggling with this one, particularly the street part of this. I want more people in Beaverton. I'm pretty sure I'm going to vote no on this, and that makes me really uncomfortable for those homeowners because it's really hard for me to ask existing Beaverton taxpayers to take on this risk. If this were like more houses, I would be willing to do it, but we know what our budget's like. We know digging the hole deeper, for me, it's a little too hard to do right now. I'm 100% willing to, if this were modified to just the homes, I would 100% support this and gladly welcome them to the Beaverton family. But the notion that we should take on additional tax burden infrastructure to maintain a street where the vast majority of homes on that street will contribute nothing to Beaverton for that maintenance, nothing for the police that will, you know, and be servicing that area. All of the things that you all know about. I can't ask my neighbors to do that. I live right in front of, you know, a retirement facility with people on fixed income. We might have some asks of them later this year, but part of that question that I will have for them is, have I done everything I can to make the you know, those questions as real and as honest? And if I just say yes to this street, then even though it's a small, tiny bit, then I can't answer yes anymore, that I've done everything I can. to lessen that burden. And so I don't know what our options are. If we could remove the street and just take the houses, I'm a yes. But as it's written right now, I can't support it.
So technically, we're in a public hearing. So because there's a motion on the floor, we'd have to vote with the way that it is suggested now. If the vote were to go down, then we could create a new amendment. So in the future, if any counselor was like, hey, that's not how I want to vote, when you read through the script, it gives us a couple options. And so the council president doesn't always have to make the motion. And if you were inclined, that's why I'm asking you to follow along in the script. Clearly, I don't want like everyone just trying to make motions at the same time. But so for tonight, we'll hear everyone else's comments and then we'll kind of make a plan before we vote. That way we know the direction we're going. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be voting in support of this annexation. I always love to look at what we've done in the past. I do think precedence is important for us to have consistency in our decision making. Of the three that I could find in just a couple minutes of looking through our agendas, 2 of the 3 had rights of way in it. The third already was, the street was neighboring city road. So I think it's a standard practice of part of what we're doing. And I also think it does contribute to us kind of building a whole Beaverton as we, continue. I think we hear a lot of reasons, and the more we do these, for us to look at a more holistic annexation policy, for us to make this a lot simpler on us. But for me, for consistency's sake and seeing how we've treated ordinances that were including annexations do include the rights of way, I will be voting in support.
Councilor Teeter.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Duggar and I have had a lot of conversations about annexation over the past several years that we've known each other. And I think generally we're very much in alignment with what we prioritize and like wanting to support the fiscal sustainability of the community and make sure that properties that are being brought in are supporting the future financial condition of the city without adding too many liabilities. That said, I do lean towards supporting this motion as it was made. I think adding the street gives us more opportunity to annex more properties and build out our city boundary, which is a goal of the council and the city. And so I will be voting in support. But I do hear Councilor Duggar's comments, and they resonate with me too. I think they're important to consider.
Councilor Tivnon.
Yeah, that was well said, Councilor Teeter. I agree with you. I agree with the spirit of what you're saying, Councilor Duggar. I also recall from having witnessed past city council conversations prior to joining the council, as well as ones after joining it, that coming up with a comprehensive annexation strategy and plan and just building around some true vision on how to simplify this and make it easier and not just these little tiny bits and pieces coming in here and there is something that has been of interest for a long time. Something I think we should probably discuss at our retreat coming up, and maybe making that a reality. I have a feeling it's not the sexiest topic, so probably keeps finding its way down the priority list in favor of other things that are just really easier to sink your teeth into. But this gets to a really important topic around funding and who's picking up the tab for what. So I'd appreciate having that conversation. And as for tonight, I will be approving this annexation.
And you are correct, Councilor Tivnon. It's not actually ever made it to a council priority, but it is something that repeatedly comes up in conversations the entire time I've been a city councilor. But I think you're also right that sexy topics tend to get to the top of the list because that's what we want to talk about in the community and do. But this has so many inner ties with the work that we're doing around climate justice, around neighborhood equity, around neighborhoods coming in, what their infrastructure looks like, those around us. So as council is starting to think about their priorities, we have to have a fair balance of what is really cool, which I struggle with because I want to do cool things, and some of the very practical things that we're expected to do as elected officials. Councilor Duggar?
Yeah, I think that gets to the root cause of my issue here, is that we don't have a comprehensive strategy. And I think we've got it as unsexy as that is, you know, we've got to get to that point. The other point I'll make is I'm trying to think of the words. Over in the Raleigh Hills area, we basically annexed a couple houses on it, but we ended up building a sidewalk on the road, right? And I think about that a lot because I was part of that Transportation Capital Advisory Board back in the day. And I can tell you there was a lot of conversation in the community on that board around the fact that only 2 of those houses on that street were paying property taxes into Beaverton for that sidewalk, but that inevitably the neighborhood was going to benefit. And at the end of the day, I don't care if a kid is a Beaverton resident or not, they deserve a safe place to walk and to bike and places like that. So that's why I would move forward with it. But I think we need a comprehensive strategy. I think that would make, instead of us having these conversations every time, because I will probably bring it up every time until we get one, because this is nothing personal in this instance, like we really need to get that comprehensive strategy, because like I would feel comfortable supporting things like this in that instance. And I can tell you every time we bring this up, unless it's a big development or multiple houses with enough revenue to support that, I'm going to feel uncomfortable and I will probably vote no. So we've got to work on that together as a team, and we got to make that as a priority. And I really think, as unsexy it is, I think the community, based on my experience on the Transportation and Capital Advisory Board, when we did that sidewalk, I think the community wants us to do that work too, because I think when they pay attention to this sort of stuff, and most people don't, they're too busy, they're having the same questions that we're all having too. So thanks.
I look forward to you bringing that level of zeal to our February retreat, and I expect it to be one of your items. Councillor Hassan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to support this, but I do want to say, and I'm going to push back a little, like, does this have to be a priority? Could it be something that happens in a work session where staff hears from us on some of the things that we'd like to see? And I don't know, and maybe that's a question for Jenny, but, you know, is it having a work session around annexation strategy? Does it have to make it to a priority list? Because
the group effort to do it, but I think the city manager could weigh in. That's why she hasn't done it yet.
Okay, Jenny.
I can clarify that. While there's always interest, my conversations at the county level is that they are not ready to engage in those conversations right now, but there can always be surface conversations that we can have, and it is a group dialogue, and we do need to be sensitive in how we go about it. But there are things that we can do offline. As a city, for instance, we have a study that can be updated so that we can look at cost benefit analysis, making sure that our partners are comfortable with that, because there's so many stakeholders involved. So we do have work that we can do kind of parallel to inform ourselves, but the bigger, broader conversation just needs to be handled in a sensitive way where everybody's on the same timeline.
Okay, because I think like there's like a couple questions that staff is making answers on based on their expertise, absent of council weighing in on some questions, right? Like the street, right? Like, is that something we want to do as a standard, right? Like, could we have a work session in the near future to talk about maybe best practices around specific decisions that could be that could be a little bit less of a lift? So that's just kind of my thought, Councilor Duggar. I just want you to know, like, I hear your concern and I care about it, and I will help bring it forward however that looks. But tonight I am going to support this. So thanks.
Okay, it looks like we are time for a roll call vote.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Yes.
Councillor Hassan.
Yes.
Councillor Duggar.
No.
Councillor Kimmy.
Yes.
Councillor Teeter.
Yes.
Councillor Tivnon.
Yes.
Mayor Beatty.
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted 6-1.
Okay, if you would like to appeal this decision, you must appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals in accordance with LUBA rules and any applicable provision in the Beaverton Development Code.
Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, I think that there's a second matter that needs to be addressed here. Now, the annexation is
correct.
Yeah.
All right, now that the annexation has been approved, the council may either approve the zoning and comprehensive plan application and adopt the proposed ordinance or give specific direction to take other action. Is there a motion regarding the application and the ordinance?
Sorry, Mayor, I closed my script. All right, I move to approve application CPA 2022-0010 and ZMA 2022-0009 and adopt an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan land use map and the zoning map for 2 tax lots at 140 Southwest 137th Avenue and 170 Southwest 137th Avenue and a budding right-of-way located along Southwest 137th Avenue. CPA 2022-0010, ZMA 2022-0009.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion this evening? All right, seeing none, can we call the vote?
Counselor Teeter,
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer-Brigg,
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy,
Yes.
Counselor Tivnan,
Yes.
Counselor Hassan,
Yes.
Counselor Duggar,
Yes.
Mayor Beatty.
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted 7-0.
Okay, if you would like to appeal this decision, you must appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals in accordance with LUBA rules and any applicable provision in the Beaverton Development Code. Okay, so tonight we have an action item, a resolution ratifying the declaration of a state of emergency due to unsheltered homelessness. I just wanted to give the council a little bit of like why you're seeing this now. And I think you read it in the document that this week, as one of the governor's first actions, she created an executive order on January 10th, which declared a statewide emergency due to homelessness, which included the city of Beaverton by name. And if you look at that emergency order, there's not a lot of cities named in that emergency declaration. This is a lot of work that the council did this summer when candidate Kotek was here in town, walking around, looking at our issues, our government relations team being heavily engaged with the governor's transition team, with the Oregon Mayors Association asked. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that we were named in this emergency by the state, as well as Hillsborough and Washington County, kind of the 3 cities working in tandem. One of the things the executive order did say was that decisions need to come from the body. And given our form of government, the easiest way to do that is for the city manager to have declared a state of emergency and for the council to ratify that decision. The way the emergency order is going to work, it's going to create like a task force similar to if we've seen any kind of natural disaster. It's going to have a command center. It's going to have people participating in it. It's going to be able to make things move a lot quicker. It's going to have state resources. When a state of emergency is declared at the state level, a lot of time federal resources can come to that. And we need our city manager to be able to act quickly and swiftly on decisions that we've outlined. So we think that the best practice to be able to accomplish that when the mayor doesn't have executive power is for the city manager to do it. So that is what you're seeing tonight. And I know the city manager worked hard with the city attorney's office on drafting this language to be complementary to the governor's executive order. I think we all know that Jenny is not going to do anything that the council would not agree with, but this is the best way to accomplish things in a quick action. So I don't know if Jenny, if you had any thoughts on this as well.
No, Mayor, only just so that the council knows, and you did a great job of kind of setting the table, that the city code delegates me that authority. And so once that's done, which I've already done, I've done the declaration, you'll be ratifying it. It can't exceed approximately 60 days, but it can be extended by 60 days for each period. So I'll be working really closely with the attorney's office, kind of taking a pulse check of where the governor's office is through the mayor to determine how long we need to have the emergency order in place. And then once we don't, we can have it sunset, but we also need to understand the funding mechanism, because part of this provides good optics, but it also helps kind of secure the council's importance around addressing homelessness and recognizing that it is an emergency. So that's it, just in a nutshell.
And I know Councillor Tivenon and Councillor Hassan were the only ones on council, but we ratified the emergency order on COVID multiple times over a 2-year period, because it's 60 days at a time. So it was very natural. It came back on consent if it needed to be. So we could talk about it being on consent or coming back in a further action item, but we extended that emergency order quite a few times. Does council have any questions of staff? Because it's an action item we're going to vote on, but I want to make sure you have your information prior to calling for a vote. Councillor Huston?
Yeah, quick question. So, Mayor, you mentioned that it's like there's a task force and that's with the city. Like, I'm just trying to understand like workload and then money. Like, what does that look like? Is there
There's not a task force with the city? The governor is creating an emergency management structure. So a lot of times that includes a command center. So if this was a wildfire, they would drop a command center in, and then there's emergency management structure, which we fall in. We have an emergency management team. So we would be a piece of the larger puzzle, not the whole thing.
Okay. And then in terms of like work, like the work that we need to do, like what is, it's just right now, it's just giving Jenny. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know yet. And so this is a little bit of pre-work. And I think obviously Jenny would come back to us in an event of some substantial investment. But it's also important because the way federal funding flows is that we have to kind of be in the same kind of motion that the state is to be able to receive any.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Duggar?
Does this, and I'm trying to understand like resolutions and making sure I get this correct. I'm totally in support of this and Jenny having the resources and it says in the one of the points about preventing homelessness. Is that too broad of a thing? Just in general, like
we want it to be broad because we don't know how the funding is coming, right?
I see.
So we think, the governor has I believe it's about an initial $100 million coming to this, and that might be matched with federal funding. So if it comes down the pipe that it's about eviction relief, we need the kind of broader language to be able to execute that.
Yeah, no, that's why I wanted to make sure that was basically part of this. So it's not just, so that's perfect. I just want to go. Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't want to like overstate like the amount of like, it is very good we're being named in this order. And even though our issues look different than Portland, this is a really great moving step for us, and it gives us a seat at the table for regional solutions and problems. So I'm excited, not that I'm excited that we have to do this, but this is going to give us the ability to navigate and do some work regionally. With that, let's go ahead and take a vote. Council President.
I have a comment.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Kimmy.
Yeah, just the fact that we are mentioned with the Portland, City of Portland and Multnomah County, we'll be at the same table, right? I don't want them to get all the attention. So I just want to give kudos to Jenny and then use some power to bring some funds to Beaverton. That's what I was going to say.
Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution ratifying a declaration of a state emergency due to unsheltered homelessness.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Lacey, I just want to say thank you to you too. I know you've been a big leader in this, and I want to publicly acknowledge your work as mayor, leading in this space too.
Thank you. It's a good team effort at the city. I think even given kind of our rocky where we are with transition and where we're at, this gives Jenny and I the ability to really hit it from both sides. Obviously, I can't direct staff. She can do that, but I could sit at the table with regional leaders and make sure Beaverton is represented, because Councillor Kimmy, I have the same concerns that you do. And so does the city of Hillsborough, which is why it was important for us to be at the table, because our issues look different. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. And I think this is very complementary to the work that we're doing around the city. All right, with that, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Councillor Duggar.
Yes.
Councillor Hartmeyer-Brigg.
Yes.
Councillor Hassan.
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy,
Yes.
Counselor Teeter,
Yes.
Counselor Tibnon,
Yes.
Mayor Beatty.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted 7-0.
All right, Jenny really wanted us to work tonight, so we have two first reading ordinances. On February 7th, 2023, during the regularly scheduled city council meeting, a public hearing will be held regarding an ordinance amending the Beaverton Development Code relating to the Shelter Code project, TA 2022-0004. On February 7th, also, during the regularly scheduled council meeting, a public hearing will be held regarding an ordinance adopting Chapter 7.08 of the Beaverton City Code, prohibiting the retail sale of dogs and cats. Okay, so we have 3 work sessions ahead of us tonight. I do want to talk a little bit about the work session coming first, 23028. I think I had received a lot of emails and a lot of social media posts on this, which is why I thought we were going to have a lot more public comment than we did. But I think it's important for the community to know that in 2008, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals determined that cities cannot enforce anti-camping ordinance if they do not have enough homeless shelter beds available for their unaccompanied community members. But that ruling did not necessarily mean a city could not enforce any restrictions on camping in public properties, so as long as there is not a blanket ban on camping. Later in 2001, after input from a working group of cities, homeless advocates, and Oregon Law Center on how to adhere to the court ruling, the state legislature enacted a new legislation called House Bill 3115 that requires local jurisdictions to ensure that their camping ordinances are objectively reasonable as a time, place, and manner with regard to persons experiencing homelessness. A review by our own legal team has determined that our current camping ordinance will require amendments in order to meet this new law. Tonight, we are beginning a series of conversations about the requirements of HB 3115 and the city's option to thoroughly address them, considering all stakeholders and those impacted by the lack of housing for everyone. We recognize that homelessness is a complex issue that impacts all levels of our community. It directly impacts people who are experiencing homelessness and the people who care about them. It impacts our businesses and our house community member. This is a systemic issue that affects lives and livelihood. And we are approaching it with a people-first mindset focused on dignity and care. Tonight, the city is starting the first of several conversations around the city ordinance because of House Bill 3115. This is just one of several efforts to address homelessness. We have a temporary severe weather shelter operating right now. We acquired property for a new year-round shelter that are with the works of tenant improvement plans as we speak. We have a safe parking program. We have a social worker at our library and outreach workers who are helping to connect people and their resources every day. In a few weeks, we are sending a team of staff from the city and the community partners to New York to work on a collaborative solution around homelessness. And we are working with developers to build more affordable housing. What we do with House Bill 3115 is one more piece to a comprehensive approach to homelessness. With that being said, I want to turn it over to staff to start our presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors. Glad to be here tonight to talk with you about the requirements of House Bill 3115. I have with me tonight Grace Wong, Assistant City Attorney, and Lieutenant Steve Schauer from Beaverton Police, who will be co-presenting with me on this. So I'm going to start with the introduction. I'm hoping staff can, thank you, share the slides. Next slide, please. So we're going to cover several things. Oh, looks like we're sideways. Several things tonight. First, we're going to do a general background on HB 3115 and talk a little bit about the affected ordinances. We'll also then take a look at the proposed timeline for this process. I'll give you a preview that this is something that we have to have in place by July 1st. So this is moving quickly. We're going to take a look at the options that staff has developed for you over time, talk a little bit about the goals, and also a little bit about what our neighboring jurisdictions are doing. Obviously, we're part of a region, and people are traveling back and forth all the time. Both housed and unhoused folks do that. And so we'll talk a little bit about what's happening with our neighboring jurisdictions because of that, along with stakeholder engagement, and then we'll cover next steps. The piece that I want to, there's a couple of pieces I want to emphasize in what the mayor just stated. First, our priority is always to get folks into shelter when we can. And so, hopefully we got it up right. So this is really focused on the fact that our shelter capacity is not as robust as we quite need it to be. So what happens when we don't have shelter to offer folks? This is also an action that is required by the state. And so we are moving forward because of that. And this is just a first conversation between now and June. So next slide, please. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Lieutenant Schauer to walk us through the background.
Okay, so we put together a internal homelessness team, which was a bunch of folks, some of the three that are presenting to you, as well as some other members of the mayor's office and the police department. And we worked through a lot of the kind of pros and cons of the different directions that we could go in making a recommendation to you. For us, as far as the police department goes, the recommendation that we're going to make doesn't really change how we are currently interacting or how we will really interact with the homeless community members in the future. We try really hard to do a good job with our police mountain bike team to build relationships with the homeless folks, the businesses, and people that are just other stakeholders in the community. We also try really hard to provide resources and address the problems that we identify when we interact with these folks. And then we also partner with a lot of outside entities to create those resources and get them to them. The last resort that any of us want to do is enforcement. But as we go through this, these options, I think that it's pretty apparent that we do have to have a tool of enforcement because some of these folks are just not as interested in getting the resources or help that they need to. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And staff, if you could forward it 2 slides, one more. Just want council and members of the public to see this is what Lieutenant Schauer was just covering around the current BPD enforcement protocols around building relationships, triage, offering resources, and the fact that enforcement really is a last resort for us. And I think with that, we turn it over to Grace to start to walk us through the legal framework.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Grace Wong, and happy to be here to talk about House Bill 3115. So as the slide suggests, this is a House bill that was adopted by the Oregon legislature back in 2021. And what that says is that it requires all cities and counties to ensure their camping ordinances are, quote unquote, objectively reasonable as to time, place, and manner with regards to persons experiencing homelessness. And that date of July 1, 2023 is really when all cities and counties have to have their ordinances come into compliance on or before that date. So that's why we're here before you today, and why we needed to take a look at our city code. Could you advance to the next slide, please? So in looking at our Beaverton City Code, these are the 3 primarily affected city ordinances. You have BC 505-117 and 505-118, and that's the prohibited camping ordinance that we, City Council, adopted back in 2018. What those ordinances say is that it prohibits camping on the city's right of way at all times. And it was a response really to the complaints regarding concentrated camping activities along Southwest 5th Street, which was near Western Avenue, so the 5th and Western encampment. There's also another city code provision that comes along with, because it's an ordinance that regulates the acts of sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry. And that is BC 9.08 100I. And that prohibits camping or staying overnight in any vehicle on the property or adjacent parking lot. And there's 4 specific lots that we're talking about, and those are primarily at the library and the adjacent parking lots of the Beaverton City Library. So that will also have to be looked at and amended in response to House Bill 3115. Next slide, please. And because we have a due date of July 1, 2023, internal staff, we have a work group, and we looked at what could be a realistic timeframe for having us come into compliance. And this is what we have at a very high level. So our proposed timeline here is to have, we're before you today on January 17th to get direction from you on the feedback that we're proposing. And then once we get feedback from you, we think in February, we'll have time to draft the proposed ordinance and then get further refinement from internal city staff. And then tentatively in March, we will come back for a work session for getting for council to get another look at the draft ordinance. And then we'll refine the draft in April and then hold a public hearing tentatively scheduled in mid-May. We'll refine it further. And then in June, early June, we'll have a public hearing, and hopefully, if all goes well, council will be okay to adopt ordinance amendments before the July 1 timeframe. Next slide, please. So in any resulting amendments to city ordinances and any underlying programs, these were what the internal staff group was thinking. We want an ordinance that's clear and understandable for anyone who's reading it. We want the underlying program to be feasible and sustainable so that any words on the page is supported by a program that is able to be done by the city. We also want to continue to follow best practices for enforcement, because we hear that BPD bike team is really doing a pretty good job in working with businesses and people experiencing homelessness. And we want to make sure that those practices are continued in any resulting ordinance. We also want to continue to offer resources and services to provide a path for those experiencing homelessness so that there's a path out for them. So these are the things that we're thinking about as we're formulating options for you. And in any single option that we select, we would like to continue thinking about these goals. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sia to talk about more specifically what those goals could be.
Thank you, Grace. So we have developed 3 general paths that you all could take. And if you give us direction on which of these 3 paths or some combination of them that you prefer, that will allow us then to take this to next steps. So the first option that we developed was something we're calling the designated camps option. And this is one where we make use of the manner aspect of the time, place, and manner regulation. So if we were to make use of just the manner aspect, we would be designating camp sites where persons experiencing homelessness may camp. So Portland, for example, is using the designated camps as part of its strategy. So what this would do is make camping illegal in most areas of the city, except for these designated camps. Now, what this would also mean is that the city would need to find locations to set up, manage, and run the designated camps. Not an easy proposition. We've also, the preliminary work we've done also looks at the both the logistical and the cost issues associated with that. And staff is not thinking that that's necessarily a very feasible path for us to walk. So you'll see option 3, I'll give you a preview again, is the option that staff recommending. So that's option one. This is the manner aspect. Next slide, please. Option two, then we're calling prohibited areas, and this makes use of both the manner and the place aspects of the regulation. So this would remove entire areas from camping altogether. It would, the challenges though remain around it being both prohibitively expensive and logistically difficult. So what would happen in this scenario, there would be places in the city where encampments could form over time. So some of the challenges under this one is that de facto encampments could form where they're not explicitly prohibited. And over time, we would probably need to clean up those encampments multiple times. We have some experience that those can be expensive to do as well. So that's option two, what we're calling the prohibited areas. Next slide, please. So option three, we're calling the time, place, and manner option. So this would bring in an aspect of time as well. So we would remove limited areas from camping altogether, just as you would under option two. But we would also provide some manner regulations that apply to how a person may camp in those remaining areas and set some daily time limitations around them. For example, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. is when folks could camp. So I'm going to walk through each piece of this time, place, and manner over the next several slides so you can see what this might look like. And this would be the kind of deeper dive we need to do as next steps. So next slide, please. So as part of the place regulation, we could look at removing certain areas altogether. We could limit the number of camps where camping is prohibited outright. We could consider removing high impact areas from allowing camping to happen. So typically those are things like around schools, emergency egress, those kinds of things. So that would be something we would need to look at. Next slide, please. The next piece is about manner regulations. This would describe how a person must camp if they were camping under this ordinance, and things like ADA access would be considered as part of that. And then third, next slide, please. Third would be, sorry, I went too far. The last time would be the time aspect of this, as I was mentioning a little earlier. So that by limiting camping to, for instance, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., then we would ask folks to move along in the morning. Encampments wouldn't form over time. Now, the important piece of any of these options is that there would be services that would have to come along with them. And for the first two options, we talked about both logistically and financially that we thought those issues were significant. In this third option, we feel like the services that would need to accompany this one are a little more realistic. They would be things we expect. They would be things like storage for people to store their things during the day. It would be things like a day or access center where people could go during the day to receive basic services, showers, laundry, those kinds of things. And that feels like something we would still have to figure out how to support those things, but those feel more financially feasible. Next slide, please, and I will pass it over to Grace to take us home here.
So questions have come up on what other jurisdictions are doing, and this is the information we've gathered on that. So we've heard that Portland adopted 5 resolutions, which includes the discussion of designated campsites, and one of those 5 was that was on November 3rd of last year. And today, actually, earlier this afternoon, Washington County had a preliminary discussion with their Board of Commissioners in which this was a topic for them to discuss amongst each other. And then we also hear that in February next month, Hillsborough and Tigard will go before their city council, also talking about House Bill 3115. So it appears that our neighboring jurisdictions are along very similar timeframes to review ordinances and make any necessary changes all before July 1 of this year. I want to make note that there's been talk also about coordination and possible discussion, and Washington County has initiated several meeting requests, and we've been attending meetings with Washington County and other cities in Washington County to talk about House Bill 3115 to see whether we could coordinate or discuss needs and issues. And we are still in those meetings, and so those meetings are still ongoing. And Sia has more information if you want to know more about future meetings. So next slide, please. So this is a slide on stakeholder engagement. I am not a public engagement division person, but I know of a few at the city, and this is the advice they gave me. And this is our proposed plan for notifying stakeholders, and that includes notifying NACs, people who have signed up for Notify Me notifications, updating our social media pages. We also plan to update the city response to homelessness page. And then because there's a number of seasoned internal advisory groups, we want to inform and keep up to date these advisory groups and get feedback from them, which includes the IHT, which is a internal group mentioned before, the shelter code team that's been talking about shelters in Beaverton. And once we really refine a draft and give it to council for feedback, and then once that's ready for external circulation, we then plan to share it with neighboring jurisdictions and other stakeholders to obtain their feedback as well, but that's not for a later time. Next slide, please. The more immediate steps are as follows. What I plan to do after I get council direction tonight is to draft a proposed ordinance that incorporates the direction that I received from City Council this evening. And then once that is done, I get internal staff feedback from IHT, from the internal work group, from the shelter code team, and so on and so forth. And once I have that feedback in with red lines, I can then refine the draft edit to see how that can be made better with those comments. And then tentatively right now, we're planning to come back for a second work session in March so that I can present this refined draft ordinance for you to react and provide further feedback on. What I envision this is an iterative process, right? We have high-level guidance from you. Once I have that high-level guidance, I can draft this ordinance, present that to you for feedback, and then refine that further, and so on and so forth until we get to June. So next slide, please. But before we can do that, I would like perhaps council to perhaps answer these questions before you. And that is, what is council's direction on these three options? Are there particular aspects you would like us to explore further before, drafting this ordinance? And then I can take your feedback and draft that into an ordinance. And with that, I'm ending my presentation and opening up for questions.
Thank you. Councilor Teeter.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Grace and Lieutenant Shayer. When I was working with the Beaverton Downtown Association, we had a lot of conversations with the downtown business community and residential community, and there was a lot of question over like, what is the appropriate response for the community when they are dealing with a lot of these issues themselves and seeing it impact their business or their neighborhood. And I just want to put this out there for the community. From the resources and services we've got now, one of the best things that seems like you can do is call the police, because they've got access to a lot of the supportive services and they can help people get access to care. Our bike outreach team is very good. And I do feel like that's the best step, at least for the system we've got set up right now. As far as some of the questions here, one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about, is the borders with Washington County and the city of Beaverton borders. Given that they're so jumbled and kind of broken, I just want to make it clear, like, how do people know when they're following city of Beaverton regulations versus Washington County? And so I think some sort of collaboration there with how we communicate or the policies we're putting in place could be helpful. So just something to consider as we keep going forward. I do find myself leaning towards option 3 with the time, place, and manner. I think that makes sense for Beaverton with regards to the cost and the practicality of it. And then the third piece is, I would love to hear from some of our service provider partners in the future who are providing some of the direct care themselves. And then my last piece is for stakeholder engagement. It might be helpful to add like the Beaverton Downtown Association or the Chamber of Commerce for some business group outreach. And if there are other community groups out there that could be potential partners or at least can help spread the word, I think that could be great too. I just want us to get the word out there once we start enacting some different policy and getting feedback. Thank you.
Council President.
Thank you. I think for me, I personally, I'm struggling with all of the options. That's not news to our amazing presenters tonight. But 3 is the one that I'm also leaning into. I think it'd be the one I'd like us to explore further. For me to be able to consider this objectively reasonable support services and storage locations, some of the other things you mentioned, Sia, are going to be really critical considerations I will have when, kind of deciding from a policy standpoint where we go. I know we don't have case law yet to help us interpret what objectively reasonable means, but I don't want Beaverton to be the one to be made an example of, right? So I would ask that we choose a really human-centered approach as we're exploring this. I think that was kind of one thing that I think number 4 kind of gets to in terms of the goals of the ordinance program, but I think the human-centered approach to this is really important to me, as we've heard from so many community members and the different organizations that have come to us to do the housing talks. We've talked so much about destigmatizing people experiencing homelessness and really treating them as humans. So if we can have a really human-centered policy, that to me is like what I can get behind. I also am curious if we are considering talking to any of our community members who are experiencing homelessness. I know we do have great outreach through our BPD bike team, and I don't remember our other partner's name who also is out in the community a lot, but I think that would be something I'd be kind of interested in. And I think coordinating with the county is also something that could be pretty critical to Councilor Teeter's point. There's just so many parts of Beaverton that you cross the street or you just step next door and you're just in the county. So I think that coordination cross-jurisdictionally is going to be really important to come up with an approach that works for us as a whole community and not just the city of Beaverton. Thank you.
Councilor Ducker.
Thanks, Grace, Lieutenant Sharon, Sia. To answer your question, I'm leaning towards time, place, manner. Oh, it's late already. Couple things, great comments by Councilors Teeter and Hartmeyer. Couldn't agree more. Communications will be key here, particularly trauma-informed communications and a trauma-informed approach. And not just to our community members, particularly to houseless folks, many of which we're gonna have to get really creative on reaching, i.e. not just social media and our websites, because maybe you don't have access to that, right? I was just thinking to Lieutenant Chair's point earlier, maybe our bike team could weigh in on that, like reaching those folks and sharing with them the rules. But as Councilor Teeter and Hartmeyer also alluded to, jurisdictional lines, I'm a counselor and I barely know them, right? I have to go to Google Maps every time. So we need to be really clear on that communication to the folks once the rules are in place. But also my hope is that if we go first, that other jurisdictions will follow our lead here. because it's going to be really complicated if I'm camping in Aloha with a different set of rules, and then Beaverton and Tigard and all these various places, and without even knowing where the boundaries are, right? Like that's going to be really complicated. Lastly, and more importantly, I think we all want ultimately a comprehensive strategy around this from end to end. These are requirements from the state. We have to do them, but this needs to be part of an overall plan that begins with preventing folks from falling into houselessness, helping those that are already there, a framework for our community expectations, and then supportive resources once we get people into housing to keep them there. And that would make me more comfortable supporting all of this if this were part of a bigger plan. Appreciate you all putting this together. Thank you.
Councilor Tibnon.
Thank you. I'm in favor of time, place, and manner. I think it provides us the most flexibility. And to the point, Washington County is already going to be working with us in terms of operating the shelter once it's up and running. So that's the beginning of hopefully a beautiful friendship around this topic. And I think that this will probably evolve over time. But the one that I'm absolutely dead set against is designated camps. To me, that it just reminds me of what happened in Los Angeles back in the early 1900s. They called it containment, resulted in an area called Skid Row. There's been generations of people born into that area or neighborhood of downtown. And I don't think that we need to replicate what that became. And then as far as moving forward from here, I'm assuming that this can be revisited over time as we figure out what works and what doesn't, and the flexibility. Can you just speak about that as we're talking through this?
Grace, I'm going to let you talk about the legal side of that.
So all of this is embodied in a city ordinance, and anytime you want to amend a city ordinance, it'll just go through the same ordinance process, which is outlined in city code. So it's not difficult to do. It's just, it's just the city ordinance process.
I guess the reason I bring it up is I think that one of the things I appreciated about the process that you referenced back in 2017 or so, when the car camping ordinance was passed, or safe parking ordinance, was that there was feedback coming to us, metrics, and talking about how many people were utilizing that service, how many people had received supportive services or resources from it. So building something around this as well, just to give the council some real-time feedback on a predetermined timeline to understand how it's working and if it's being supported enough too, because I know enforcement around this is going to be a big topic. And I've heard some chatter about this potentially adding to the bike team so that they have more resources. And how does the mental health support services that we're starting to invest in, both here and at the county level, factors into it. So it's just the measuring of it and its effectiveness, and if we feel like we're moving the needle at all in our response to this would be great.
Yeah, so in 2018, there was that same desire for information to be shared with city council. So there was a clause explicitly included that said this police chief must report to the city council on these defined metrics. And so something similar can be added to this ordinance, or we just mimic what is in the existing ordinance in whatever changes we make, so that the same information can be shared with city council so that they're aware of what's working and what's not.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Councilor Husson.
Thanks. That just opened a whole bunch of things that I want to talk about now, but that response, Grace. So I'll wait a second. I just want to support what Councilor Duggar is saying, which is really focused on trauma-informed care. That's just something that's really important for me, and that human-centered piece. I want to support what I think I think it was Councilor Teeter talking about including BDA, the chamber, and just other, making sure that we're engaging with all the right stakeholders in our community. I do have nerves around how Washington County is going to go about this, because it'll directly impact like what we're doing and what we're not doing. Gosh, you just opened up this whole can in my head, Councilor Tivnan. Like, is there a way to get some sort of reporting that comes to the council that helps us understand what really is happening? You know, today we don't get anything, and I'm not saying that we need it, but, you know, I think the staff has done a really good job at coming up with solutions to what they understand our problems. But sometimes we hear about stuff kind of on the outside, and we don't know what we don't know. And so what does it look like to get more information around like what is happening on the streets and how the council can better direct money? So for example, if we learn that 80% of people that are on this that are struggling need mental health support, so that then we can help make better policy choices. I do want to ask this question. You know, I believe in the humanity of the people that are struggling to live on the streets, and I know that there's also been some more, you know, violent folks, and have we thought through like what does it look like to have language and or just thinking around those scenarios? I think they're very rare, but I do think that it's worth maybe just addressing for me for a minute. Anybody?
Appreciate that, Councilor Hassan. I think Lieutenant may be able to talk a little bit about the enforcement side of that, but I think we have outreach workers on the ground who are very experienced at working with this group of folks, many of whom have lived experience of their own, and bring that to bear in the work that they do. And so a trauma-informed approach includes an understanding of the how that trauma can manifest itself, I think, for folks who are on the street. So you're right on in terms of wanting to make sure that that gets addressed. Several of you have talked about the trauma-informed lens we need to bring, and that's right. Lieutenant, do you have anything you want to add to that around enforcement?
Yeah, Councilor Hassan, I think it's a good question. And our officers, especially the bike team, are so familiar with the community out there that we kind of know who is where and who is struggling with what. I can confidently tell you that people that are looking for resources in this city are getting them. The people that are not looking for resources, I think, are the focus to why this ordinance works, because the ability to require movement requires them then to try to like better themselves in some sort of way. You know, maybe go see a counselor, maybe go look for work, maybe, you know, but not what we've learned is, and you can see it in Portland and some of the Washington County camps, if we allow folks to just hunker into these camps, then truly it's inhumane to the fact that they may hunker in there until they die. So the movement really is important, at least in the experience that I've had. And we'll continue, I promise, as a police agency, to go above and beyond to find resources for those that are looking for them. And then if we have somebody that's violent or a problem, that gives us more tools to be able to effectively house them where they need to be housed, or appropriately get them the help they need to get. Does that make sense?
It does. And thank you. That helps a lot. I do appreciate it. I would support the time, place, and manner staff recommendation. I do think it's worth thinking about high impact areas. I'm not sure if I heard that from anyone else, but I do want to say it, like schools, you know, just really thinking through, you know, what areas we want to be thoughtful of as we're planning this out some more. So thank you so much for this presentation.
Councilor Kimmy?
Yeah, I do support time, place, and manner. I have just a few questions. How closely are we working with the Washington County regarding coming up with the plan and new code?
Yeah, we've met with them about this, and we are keeping in touch with what their elected body is wanting to do. And we're keeping them in touch with what you all are going to say on this as well. So obviously, each elected body gets to make its own decisions on this, but I think we're all very interested in making sure that we're having good communication and we align ourselves to the extent we can, just recognizing that we do have differences that we also have to address as we work.
Okay, thank you. Another question is regards to time, place, and manner. Where would they go during those times they cannot camp? Are we giving them an option?
Yeah, that's part of the service provision. It's a good question. It's part of the service provision that would need to go along with it. So they're camping overnight. Part of what we would stand up during the day is something like a day center, where there are services available to them to support them. So it would be kind of a halfway measure that would then hopefully start to connect them to services and get them under roof over time.
So in order for us to ask them to move during the night, we need to provide them with or connect them with the services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we haven't identified where they should be going, number one. Another question is, if they don't want to go into the shelter inside, then where will they go?
Well, and that's part of the issue here, right? Is we have to be able to offer them a shelter. And actually, I should let Grace, as your legal expert, answer this one. So let me step back and let Grace answer this one for you.
Yeah, so we are expecting if there is shelter available for people to make use of the shelter, so that this ordinance really would apply only to those who are not able to make use of the shelter for whatever reason, and giving them an option to be out on the streets, which is what I think the intent of House Bill 3115. It contemplates that some people will not be able to have shelter, and where will those people be, and what do your rules allow for them in those instances. So that's what this ordinance is aimed to address. And then for everyone else who is able to take advantage of a shelter or services provided to not be on the streets, then they would be going to those places. And it's really only those who are unable to take advantage of shelters who would still be on the streets.
Okay, so then if those people who cannot find the shelter, they'll still be on the streets. So then there'll be violation of our code. Then how would we enforce it?
So if they can find shelter, then they're eligible for shelter, and then we're good. If they can't find shelter, right? So these are for folks, and there's a difference between don't want to and can't, right? So this is a scenario where they can't find shelter. Then they would be allowed to camp overnight on the streets, and then during the day, we would make sure that they have some place to go. And there are places currently where folks do go during the day, and then that's where the provision of like a day center and an access center, Washington County is already talking with us about some possibilities around that. So we could explore that further if we walk this path.
So one last question, sorry for asking too many questions. So then can we get away with not providing them with the overnight camping site if for those people who cannot find a shelter?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So those people will still be camping on the sidewalk and right of the way, right? Which is in violation of the code that we'll be changing to.
So yeah, we would actually be, you all would be enacting code that in essence allows them to camp just overnight. So that's the change that the state regulation is demanding. So right now, they technically can't camp overnight, and this would be changing it so that we are meeting the requirements of HB 3115 so that they could camp overnight. Okay. But there are going to be places, if you go with option 3, there will be places they can't camp. There will be a manner that they have to meet in order to camp. So we can put some parameters around that. And that's what we're proposing to you all to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been a step in the right direction around this conversation. I think it's incredibly hard to start to have these conversations. I think I spend probably 30% of my time as the mayor on this topic alone. And a lot of it is educating the community that says to me, well, why don't you just kick them out of the city? Or why are they there? And we have to go through this echelon of the Supreme Court and the state law and how we're meeting those, the city's anti-camping ordinance, how we got here. And so it's really challenging because I think people want simple solutions to complex problems. And as a city, we have to navigate in this space a lot. I hear a lot of wanting to work with Washington County, and I agree. That's the reason we're taking them as one of our team at 8 to New York to work on this issue together. But this council might be faced with a prospect in the future that we want something different from the county. And that's going to be a hard position for us to be in. I lived through this around marijuana when I was a brand new city councilor. We had to go through very similar time, place, and manner. Where could they operate? Our city borders make it challenging. We walked a little bit different direction than the county. I'm just saying that to be prepared. I don't think this is going to be like a kumbaya process where every city and county comes together with the same rules. So I think this city or our city council has to decide what's the most important to us and what areas could we give in or have staff give to align more in line with the county. I do think time, place, and manner is the right place to go. We know to be able to get a day center operating, we're going to have to partner with the county. And so my hope would be that we don't walk so far away from them and then turn around and say, hey, give us money for a show, like for a day center to help us work with this. This is the reality of our borders and how we operate and how we do. I do think we have an ace in SIA that understands the county better than anyone else. So please stay with us forever so you can help us through this prospect here. But having worked with so many of the county officials, I think she is an open door. It's a new, fresh relationship for the city to have to be working together in this capacity. I do think we're going to have to talk about where we might not want it. Libraries, schools, like Councilor Hassan said. I think where there's some area that we need to have conversations is with THPRD. My guess would be that they advocate for every park in the city, which we went through this with marijuana. They wanted us to outlaw any dispensary within walking distance of a park, which essentially would make the entire city not accessible. And so we're going to have to really think about language around parks, because one of the beautiful things of the city is how many parks we have. When we have to talk about things like this, it's challenging because they're literally everywhere, which is great and bad for a conversation like this. I think, we have a pretty good idea of where a lot of complaints come from. And I don't think the council always sees the emails from community members. They're often coming directly to me. They're often coming directly to city manager. They're not going through the city mailbox. And so bringing the council along on this journey will be incredibly important to make sure that they really understand what our community is saying. And the more conversations we have, the better we can informed we could be. But we're serving multiple audiences here. We're serving the houseless community themselves, homeowners, business owners, people that want us to eradicate homelessness across our city, compassionate service providers, and where we're at. I also want to remind the council that there is a day center that operates here in Home Plate Youth Services. And so we have a good track record with a good partner that's been doing work around this, and the sky didn't fall around their facilities. They're really great partners with the city. So I think we could look towards them and lessons learned and work with them on how to operate a day center for adults to kind of meet where we're at. What I think is the most important for this council is that we make these decisions and we're able to communicate them. This is a hard topic to communicate to community members about why they see homeless people in front of the library and why we're not acting, or we had public testimony on this tonight. So helping the council with talking points as we move through this, I think will be really important. That way we can have really informed decision. But I'm with Councilor Tivnon. I am absolutely against designated campsites. I think that is disastrous. We even saw the leaked memo from Portland and how the community responded to us. Time, place, and manner is able to allow the city to put our community first. We understand, the 7 of us, more about our community than anyone else. And time, place, and manner allows us to be flexible. And if we have to change things in the future because they're not working, and my hope would be if we go out of the gate and it's not working, that we move quickly to change and not wait for it to be disastrous and roll on because we're committed to that path. So time, place, and manner for me, work with the county, of course. Sia, we're going to send you in to be our good guy and bad guy. So good luck. Thanks.
And thank you very much for the feedback. It looks like we're walking the path of option 3. So staff will start the process of starting to flesh that out, and we will come back to you in March with more information about how we'll pull that together.
All right.
Grace, Lieutenant Chair, do you need anything else from council?
No.
Okay. Thank you all.
Great. Okay, we are on to Agenda Bill 23029, a draft of City of Beaverton project list for Metro 2023 Regional Transportation Plan. I know we have Jean with us tonight, and I don't know if you have anyone else, but please introduce them, and the floor is yours.
Terrific. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I'm Jean Seneschal-Biggs. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager from the Community Development Department, and joining me tonight is Jocelyn Blake, our Capital Improvement Program Manager from the Public Works Department. And then if I could just ask if my slides could appear on screen. Thank you. Great. So we're here to give you an update on the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan and Beaverton's list of transportation capital projects to include in the plan. The RTP is the Greater Portland Area's long-range plan that guides planning and investments in the region's transportation system for all forms of travel, motor vehicle, transit, biking, and walking, as well as the movement of goods and freight. The plan contains a long-term vision for the region's transportation system, goals and supporting objectives and performance targets, policies that guide decisions and actions, a financial plan, and an investment strategy that includes major local, regional, and state transportation investment priorities. So together, these elements guide planning and investment decisions to meet the transportation needs of the people who live, work, and travel in Greater Portland today and in the future. As the region continues to emerge from the disruptions of the pandemic and respond to other urgent needs and challenges, the 2023 RTP update provides an opportunity for all levels of government to work together to deliver a better transportation future. It's the plan that we coordinate together with all of our regional partners around transportation. The plan was last updated in 2018, and the next update is due by December 6th of this year when the current plan expires. As our region's federally designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, Metro is responsible for leading and coordinating updates to the RTP every 5 years. So in 5 years, we'll be back at this again. Work on the 2023 RTP updates well underway, and it will include an updated list of transportation investment priorities for the Greater Portland region. And that is the focus of our work session tonight. I just want to be really clear up front about why this project list is important. One reason it's really important is that projects that are on the financially constrained RTP list, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later, they're eligible to receive federal, state, and regional funds. So for projects like the Loop or Allen Boulevard or Canyon Road, design and construction funding are most likely to come from those sources. So if we want to approach Metro or ODOT or the federal government for project funding, that first question will be, is it in the RTP? So that's why it's important here. So let's go to the next slide. Before we dive in, I just want to point your attention to a few questions for you tonight. Think about these as we go through this, and then we get to discussion at the end. You can share your thoughts. Really, we're here to ask, do these project lists reflect and represent city priorities? Should any of the projects move to a higher or lower priority list? Are there any projects that should be prioritized from that on hold list? And are there any projects that you feel strongly that should be removed? So let's go. Next slide. Yeah, here we go, great. Just looking back, there are more than 1,000 projects in the 2018 RTP, and that's our current plan. These are projects that come from local and agency transportation plans, including Beaverton's. And so for Beaverton and all the participating agencies in our region, this is our starting point for the 2023 RTP project list. Let's go to the next. Metro's call for projects is the process through which we update our region's project priorities. So the call opened on January 6th and it closes on February 17th. And through this process, cities, counties, agencies, and county coordinating committees build the draft RTP list for evaluation, review, and refinement. So there's two categories of lists. There's the constrained priorities. These are the region's top priorities given the current funding outlook. And you'll see there's two categories. There's near-term projects, and those are prioritized based on anticipated revenues expected to come between 2023 and 2030. And then there's the long-term project list, and those are the projects prioritized between 2031 and 2045. So this is a 20-year list based on projected revenues, and we're trying to prioritize our projects. There's also a category of strategic priorities, and these are those additional project priorities that as a region, we agree to work on them together to advance them, but they're outside of our forecasted revenues. Let's go to the next. All projects on the RTP list come from adopted plans, strategies, and studies that had a public process and opportunities for public comment. And so you can see here a list of those sources and just a few examples from Beaverton on the right side of the screen. Okay, next slide. Projects are also expected to meet specific eligibility criteria to appear on the list. You'll see them here. They need to be located on the designated regional system and with the within the MPA boundary. So you can see on the right side of your screen, there's a list of maps by mode that make up our transportation network. These projects also need to help achieve the RTP vision goals, targets, and policies. As I just said before, they need to come from adopted plans or strategies that had opportunities for public input, and they need to cost at least $2 million or be bundled with like projects to reach that cost. So not to worry, we have plenty of projects that meet this criteria. The RTP also includes a policy framework, and that builds upon an RTP vision and goals, objectives and targets, and then supporting regional policies on a variety of topics, including equity, safety, transit, congestion management, climate, and transportation pricing and mobility. I think these are all things that you've talked about in some way in your conversations here. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, that was what I just did. Let's go to the next one. Thanks. Great. So let's look at the draft vision and goals. Metro's Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, we call them JPACT. They're a group of 17 individuals, some of whom are elected officials like yourselves. Others are representatives from transportation agencies across the region. So JPACT and the Metro Council, with input from Metro's Policy Advisory Committee, developed these in 2022, just last year, to help guide this call for projects. And you'll see here that the vision is one where everyone in the greater Portland region will have safe, reliable, affordable, efficient, and climate-friendly travel options that allow people to drive less and support equitable, resilient, healthy, and economically vibrant communities in the region. So there's our draft vision. Let's go to the next. And then that vision just helps shape these draft goals, and you can see them listed here: equitable transportation, climate action and resilience, safe system, mobility options, and thriving economy. Okay, let's go to the next. And then in turn, those goals guide the assessment of the project list. So for all of the projects that we submit, we will need to show how each of those projects advances RTP goals. Later this spring, Metro staff will then conduct an analysis of all the projects that are submitted throughout the region. And their work includes transportation system modeling and analysis, as well as an analysis of all of these projects around equity, climate, and environmental impacts and benefits. Let's go to the next slide. So these next two slides focus on how staff developed this project list for Beaverton. In advance of the call for projects, staff from Community Development, Public Works, and the Finance Department coordinated with Metro and Washington County to develop this revenue forecast for that priority list time period from 2023 to 2045. And you'll find this in your agenda bill. It's table 1, and it's here at the bottom of the screen. So to develop this, we looked at a variety of revenue sources for this 20-year forecast. And then in turn, those revenue projections, they're really a tool that we use to help develop that financially constrained list of priorities. There's some certainty in the funds, but not complete certainty. For example, system development charges and transportation development taxes, they rely on development to occur for that revenue to come in. Grants depend on our success in receiving them, and gas tax revenues, we've seen how they can go up and down with the economy. And almost all of the funds that come through to us have some restriction on how they're used. All that said, including projects on the RTP list does not commit us to using these funds for these projects if other priorities emerge before the next RTP update, again, within restrictions. Nor does having a project on this list guarantee that these projects will receive that funding. Really, this is purely an exercise for us to help identify our priorities and declare them and coordinate our transportation system with all of our regional partners. But this is a chance for you all as a council to really think and focus on where are the priorities in our transportation system for major capital investments. So back to that thing I said at the beginning, the key thing to remember, projects that are on this financially constrained list, so that highest priority and high priority columns, those are the ones that are eligible to receive federal, state, and regional funds. So if we want to pursue grant opportunities to fund transportation projects, we need those projects to be on that list. Okay, great, let's go to the next. As I said earlier, we started developing our list by looking back to the 2018 list. And Beaverton's projects come from a range of adopted plans. So while a few of the projects have been completed since our 2018 RTP, they'll be removed. There's many projects that are still priorities. And then in addition to that, we have new priorities that have merged since then, specifically the downtown loop, Allen Boulevard, and areas within the Cooper Mountain Community Plan area. So to meet the forecasted funding totals of Beaverton's financially constrained and strategic lists, adding new projects to this list means that some priorities from the 2018 list are going to be put on hold. That's where they need to land. So sort of from here, we're continuing to further sort of define and clarify these projects and refine cost estimates following guidance from Metro. Escalating construction costs and inflation are a key driver. That's just really affecting the total value and number of projects in the 2023 RTP. With the exception of 2 active projects that are currently underway, the Canyon Road Streetscape Project and the Laurelwood Sidewalk Access to Transit Project, pretty much all the cost estimates that we have in our RTP list are low confidence planning level costs, right? They're based on sort of high level transportation plans. So just knowing that those low confidence cost estimates are based on sort of little known information, it's very likely that those projects costs could go up or down depending on the scope of the project as it gets refined and just even the timing of the project. So there's sort of all the disclaimers. I wanted to put them all out there for you. Go to the next. Okay, so this discussion tonight is our first step with you on this list. We'll come back on February 7th for you to take action to endorse this draft list. The Washington County Coordinating Committee has their meeting on February 13th. That's where they'll be taking an action to endorse the countywide list. That's a meeting that Mayor Beatty attends on behalf of the city. And then staff will be busy entering all of our projects to Metro by that February 17th deadline. There's refinement that continues through the spring, and then I'll return to all of you before May 24th to get your final endorsement of the list. Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, made it through. So let's circle back to these questions I shared. I have the project list here. I can bring them up on screen if there's anything you want to review together. And again, we're just looking for your endorsement, direction, input. this evening. So thanks for your attention, and we're ready for your questions and comments. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to let Kevin Teeter go first because he needs to depart after his comments.
Yes,
So Councilor
perfect.
Teeter, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jean. I want to start by saying I really like the draft goals for 2023. I think those are really solid and get a lot of the things that I really care about. I also really like how in bold it mentions like drive less is a value, because I'm always thinking like, how will this reduce the amount of vehicle miles traveled in the city, the amount of wear and tear people put on the roads, and how can we build a more sustainable and equitable transportation system. So I really like that, and I think that's a great starting point. I'm just going to run through a few projects that I like a whole lot, like maybe could move up in priority or things that could be removed or moved down. And then I might want to ask if I can spend some time with you or Jocelyn outside of the meeting, just because I'm running out of time and I got to hop off here in a minute.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, thanks for starting this work. To start off, this is really hard because a lot of these are very important and valuable and meaningful. But the Cedar Hills multimodal project for $28 million on the strategic list, and the strategic list $7 million Hall Boulevard bike lanes. Both felt like they deserved a lot of priority from me. From the on hold list that should be prioritized, the $18 million Farmington Road bike lanes between Hawken and 217. I think that'd make a huge difference for people accessing downtown. That said, a lot of times when I was looking at the budget for some of these, I'm like, these are huge projects. And if there are ways for us to do it more affordably, like Portland just enacted a repaving, restriping program where when they resurface a street, they add in bike lanes or bike infrastructure automatically and just do it with paint to start out while they work on more significant structural changes. And I don't know if that's an option here. It's not a point of discussion here, I don't think, but future consideration. And then some late term projects that I think could be removed was the $13 million for Cedar Hills and Westgate intersection, $5 million for Farmington Road and Cedar Hills intersection turn lanes, and then late term Hall Boulevard and Allen turn lanes. And I think there's just a theme there of me being like, I'm not really putting a lot of priority on turn lanes for cars. I know when I'm biking, those are often some of the more dangerous spots for me. And they're also very expensive. They might be putting the priority on car movement there. But I think this is a really good list and it's a really great starting point. So thank you both for being here and sharing it with us.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll see y'all later. I got to hop off.
Council President.
Thank you. Jean, I have a clarifying question on, you mentioned there's the 3 projects that are coming on, and so we need to take some off. And I know Councilor Teeter just mentioned a couple that he would be comfortable taking off, but what does that process look like? Do we need to come up with like the list of projects, and like, does it need to be a similar dollar amount, or did I misunderstand that an action we needed to do around that?
There's not necessarily 3 projects I'm asking you to take. Like he's provided input. I think we're just sort of taking input tonight, and we'll step back as a team and try to think about, are there ways we can shift? But the dollar amounts, we do need to still balance those lists so that near term total, we need to retain that. Let me go back and look at it. That $81 million forecast threshold, right? All of the projects on that near term list, they can't go above that. The late term projects for $226 million, also, we can't exceed that. So if we're going to move things around, it means something else has to move. If something goes up, it means something has to go down.
Okay. I get that conceptually. I guess I'm just curious, like I think I see the Loop, Allen Boulevard, and South Cooper Mountain all on the near term. So nothing needs to come off of that necessarily because they're already accounted for in the 81 million.
Correct. Yes. Sorry. Okay. Yes, they're in there.
Okay. I was
Yes,
like, what?
that's okay. Now I understand the 3 projects. Those were the 3. Yes, they're in there. They're in there in phases.
Yes.
There was sort of some creative thinking to figure out how can we keep things moving, knowing that the total cost is quite significant.
Yeah, the loop. There's so many phases. It kind of was mind blowing to me to see how many pieces, but I also really appreciate that it being broken up into phases. I think it actually can be helpful, you know, to like have that kind of incremental improvement as we go. So I feel pretty good about this list too. I feel like I have a little bit of a conflicting opinion from Councilor Teeter on the center lanes, because like I've seen a lot of benefit in like 4-lane roads becoming 3-lane roads where the middle lane is a turn lane. And so I don't know specifically if the projects he was looking at are doing anything like that, but I think like there is a utility for a center lane. So I feel pretty good about this list as is, and I can tell so much thought has gone into it. And thank you for filling in kind of the gaps in some of my knowledge through the presentation tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Terrific. I'll just add one comment, just so you all know that this is a bit of a hard exercise because our TSP is quite old, and we haven't, as a council, had all of you kind of go through that prioritization process. In 5 years, this will be a much easier exercise because we'll have a TSP adopted. We'll have identified projects that really truly reflect the priorities and policy goals. So, yeah. Who's next?
Don't worry, I'll handle that piece. I didn't know if Ashley was done talking or not. Councilor Duggar?
Yeah, I'll be real quick because I know it's late. Like corridors are really important to me, actual corridors, as a cyclist and as a driver. Although that doesn't really affect me as a driver. But imagine if you're just driving your car and all of a sudden the road goes away, right? Or it turns into a dirt road. You know, I experience that all the time in Beaverton. And I looked at the map, I looked at the projects. Honestly, it's too big for my brain to process tonight. In general, it's pretty good, but my view when I sit down and look at this will be more around connecting corridors and not just having situations where you're on a bike lane and it just ends for half a mile and then comes back, or you know, those sort of things are. We might as well not even have a bike lane there. I mean, it's dangerous and it puts people in a position to be surprised, to not know where to go, that sort of thing. So I love Councilor Teeter's comment around like doing things cheaper too, because that really weighs heavily on my mind too. Like, do we need a Lexus or can we drive like a used Toyota, right? Like on these bike lanes, can we just stripe them? Right, and take a little space away from cars, or maybe take away those center lanes, or you know, if they're not being used, like it is really difficult. And so I don't know how to say it other than that. Just like the continuous corridors are my highest priority for both, you know, and a continuous experience for both cars, pedestrians, and cyclists, and making it, you know, and that's why I brought up in the beginning of the meeting the Vision Zero, like safety. I prioritize that over speed, over everything else. So when I look through this lens, and I'm continuing to look through the map from Metro, the RTP map, those are the things I'll prioritize. And I want to make space for other councilors. Thank you for this.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Hassan?
Yeah, thanks, Jean. No surprises here. I just want to make sure that we're always, you know, prioritizing projects where we, you know, have the most need. And I trust the staff to sort of help us understand where that need is. I'm just reflecting on the comments that have been made. If this gets like kind of dicey, where like we're adding one and we're moving one and we're adding one and we're moving one, and if that goes in that direction, I'd love for us to maybe have a more visual way to do this. I know our next meeting is in person. I'm just putting it out there because I just do think that this is like trying to, as Councilor Teeter was going, like I couldn't even find the line that he was referring to because I was trying to find the projects that he was referring to. So just something to think about when this comes back to the council, because I think it'll be hard for us to keep track. And I don't know if it's just a line numbering thing. I'm pretty supportive of the projects that are that our staff along with community have identified as areas. I do want us to start thinking about how we're using data to inform some of our decision making. So like, where are we seeing specific accidents? Where are we seeing specific things? I'm imagining that that's happening, but I just want to put that out there for us to continue to be thinking about. That's all I have.
Councilor Tivnon.
I'm not going to belabor things. I think we have a council that's very in sync with each other, and also echo the sentiments about how excellent our staff are that work on this. This is a very well thought out list. I know it's not the easiest to try and put these into an order, but I also know that there is some rhyme and reason to what comes first and what it leads to and what it makes room for. I'm comfortable with the list that's been generated, and I'm also looking forward to an updated TSP down the road. So that's my piece on this one. Thank you.
This is a great list, really well thought out. And just like most things, there's an origin story. Past council wanted to weigh in on this list. The same with our TSP, because it was often coming to us, but it makes it complicated because trying to, like Councilor Teeter is like, move this up and move that down. And you're trying in real time to be like, well, is that what I want? Or is that what this person wants? I can see your side of view, but where's that's coming? I would encourage council to take a look at this list and drive some of these roads through the lens of looking at it through this project, because Allen Boulevard, our highest crashed in our safety corridor, one of the hardest ones for us to fund, needs to be higher on the list. I had to fight tooth and nails in the Washington County meeting recently to get any funding for Allen Boulevard, because they used a group of people that designated and said that road didn't meet equity and it was not a low enough income neighborhood. And I just wanted to scream, because sometimes things are really important to us and it's hard to articulate to other people. And so I think about this list in two ways. What is our priorities, and what is defensible for me to go out and work towards and get? When projects have ties with other communities or it's solving a problem, it's a lot easier to get regional support, because we're voting on the list. Then I have to go to the Washington County coordination meeting and vote our list compared to other people's lists. And then it's Washington County versus Multnomah County, and the echelon moves up and up. When I was running for council the first time, I used to do this series called Where the Sidewalks End. And I would literally tape where sidewalks end in our city, similar to Councilor Duggars about the bike lanes ending in a certain way. Doing infill and getting some of our sidewalks fixed is a high priority for me from a safety standpoint. And I also think projects that have multiple ways to get funded are easier. And when we're disciplined with a list that could get federal funding and state funding and regional support, we're more likely to get it over the line. But I also agree with Councilor Hassan. I know every single one of these projects on here. And when I look at this spreadsheet, it feels like an impossible task for me to rack and stack them. And if I'm having a hard time with it, I'm imagining the rest of the council is too. I know this is our first shot at getting council to do this list. I think we need to think about how this list is presented and how we kind of go through this. And I am really against doing amendments on the fly, of having the council do it. I want to have some kind of systematic approach or voting or something, because sometimes it's just the person with the most talking points wins, which honestly is me most of the time. And I want the rest of the council to weigh in on this and be able to internalize it and internalize the list. And so I don't know how to solve that problem, but I think it's going to be hard for us unless we adopt the list as it is, or we have criteria about how things move up or down. Because these are 7 people with very different, Kevin predominantly rides a bike. Other counselors predominantly drive. Some of us are runners. Ashley's a race walker. How we view the streets is through 7 different lenses. And I don't know how we come up with the list and do this in real time. So I don't have any solutions for you, just comments.
Can I add? Oh, sorry. Just one thought, and I'm not trying to recreate activities. A couple of us had to do an activity where we stickered things to help us. I'm not saying that that's the direction that we have to go. I do think, to Mayor Beatty's point, we're going to have a hard time grappling. And if it's going to come to that, if there's just a way for us to really visually know, is it a list? Is it something that we can all kind of look at? I do think that there's a path forward. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Tivnon, did you have a, nope, you already went. Do you need anything else, Jean?
No, but I will see you all again in a few weeks. I'll think about your comments here about how we present and share, and think about how you all can
Live
help form
voting
that
from the
list.
council. Gaius, just set it up on, no, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought Jenny was going to fall out of her chair when I suggested that one. Okay. We are on to our last one. Agenda Bill 23030, a draft real estate disposition policy. And Sarah King, you will have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here with Jeff Hunsaker, our city engineer. We're going to make this presentation fairly quick. So let me bring this up. And please let me know if you can see the slideshow. Okay, great. For some reason, it's not showing up on my screen, but that's all right. I know where we are. Okay, so very briefly, we last talked about our disposition policy almost 6 months ago. And there were a lot of changes, or some changes that you wanted made, and we've incorporated that into the current draft. But we're not going to talk about most of those changes this evening. Tonight, we're going to talk about permanent easements and kind of continue and close the loop on conversation that we started in August. After tonight, after getting direction from you on permanent easements, staff will come back to you as soon as possible with a final draft policy for approval. Easements in the context of the draft policy, the disposition policy actually covers a wide range of circumstances. Most of the properties that we will be disposing of, and we don't anticipate doing a lot of disposition, but those will probably be larger sites. But we do own small remnant properties, and we also purchase and dispose of easements. So we were focusing on easements in August. City Council was unanimous in supporting temporary easements being approved by the city manager. And I want to step back for a minute and talk. I'm assuming you all know what easements mean, but just as a quick reference, if you think about property ownership as a bundle of sticks, when you sell a property to another party, you're selling that bundle of sticks. In most cases, you're selling the entire bundle of sticks. In an easement situation, the city retains the bundle of sticks and sells a couple of sticks, not the whole bundle, but a couple of sticks to another party for a particular reason. So we're really talking about those a couple of bundles of sticks for easements. Most of the easements that we purchase and dispose of are around utilities. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. A reminder that we have street vacations and dispositions of public access easements will always go to City Council because that is required in state law. Okay, permanent easements. So as I said, most of our permanent easements that we buy and sell are around utilities. They're almost always routine and almost always non-policy related. When we met with you and talked with you in August, council raised a concern about accountability regarding easements. So what we are proposing this evening is a way to try to streamline the process for routine actions, yet elevates easements to City Council that are more visible, impactful, or policy related. Right now, our easements are being handled administratively, and we talked about, they're listed here, the types that we are handling administratively, and they're also mentioned in the staff report. I'm going to ask Jeff if he would like to elaborate at all on the types or the circumstances that Public Works gets involved in utility easements, since that's probably the most common situation in which we buy and sell easements.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So just to kind of give some examples for the 4 bullet points listed there, easement swaps when utilities need to be moved. This happens often in both public and private projects. A good example is water lines. We never replace water lines in place because that would actually take down the service for the people using that water line. So we often build it in a new location and then transfer the services over to minimize that disruption. So, but to do that, you actually get a new easement and then release the old one. Easements being granted for public or private development projects, usually we try to utilize the right of way as much as possible, but sometimes things such as gravity get in our way with our storm and sewer lines, so we have to go across private property and we would get easements in that instance. Releases of non-access easements. This doesn't occur as often, but as the city gets older and older, we have more remnant easements from infrastructure that was used in the past and is no longer used now. So this will come up every now and again, and we try to release those if it's not something we actually need anymore. And then I think Sarah has some examples for uncommon requests for easements, but one example we had in the last couple of years was having to grant an aerial easement to PGE over a water site that allowed for the construction of an important project the county was doing on TB Highway. So we wanted to help facilitate that construction to move forward, and we worked with the county and PGE to make sure that that easement wouldn't impact our water facility too much.
All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to actually move on here to our proposals. So staff's proposal is that the city manager has the authority to decide if an easement goes to council based on a consideration of, I call it criteria. I think maybe the better word is questions for consideration. I'm not going to elaborate on a lot of those. Those are in the staff report, but I will say the purpose of disposition is probably the most important. The other thing I'll say, and purpose of disposition, meaning, is it policy related or not? Is it a project we've already approved or not? Is it a council priority or not? These are the kinds of things that the city manager would ask. Staff is not proposing particular exact thresholds. The reason is that our easements can be so, they can vary so widely. You just heard Jeff talk about an aerial easement, which is kind of unusual. So we get all kinds of things and we can't predict what situation. So by posing criteria for city council or for a city manager to consider, that would help guide the city manager in determining whether to kick an easement up to city council for consideration. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is in this situation, if you are comfortable with the city manager having the authority to make this, to decide whether easements get elevated to city council or not, for any, we have are proposing in the draft something we talked about in August, and that was in a situation where city manager does make decisions, make sole decisions around easements, that gets reported to you so you know what kind of action he or she is taking. I'm going to leave it at that and see if you've got questions.
Councilor Duggar?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this. I was just wondering if there's a way we could get, I don't think it would need to be more than quarterly, but just sort of a quarterly report of all the easements that had happened, just so we're kind of aware and on the same page. Otherwise, I'm good with giving I have no issue whatsoever trusting, but I just would want to kind of keep that in my pocket if we could do that. Otherwise, thank you.
Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sarah and Jeff, for this presentation. My questions are, I think, like, generally, like, I am pretty supportive of delegating the authority, but what I don't understand out of this criteria is what would actually come to us. So to me, this feels really, like, really open, that, like, I guess I would want us to have some consistency and expectations about what types of easements would come to us. And as I read this criteria, I have kind of a hard time saying, like, how I think an easement would or would not come to council. So that's one of the things that I'm struggling with this is I don't think it gives us kind of predictability on what types of things would come ahead of us.
Yeah, good question. In that we're sort of guiding the city manager here with some admittedly somewhat vague questions. My guess, the way this is going to play out is that the kinds of things that Jeff described that are the most routine easements, those are the sorts of things that are going to stay with the city manager. Pretty much anything else is probably going to end up coming to you. And it may just be on consent agenda as well. So it may not be something that generates a lot of discussion, but it might. So I don't know if I'm I don't know if that helps you understand that.
So like, I think that like, I don't want like city council to be an impediment on the city to be able to function, right? Like, I think it's a lot to say council should approve every type of easement. I went back and rewatched this section of our meeting from August because I remember it. But you know, to me, I think like you had a list of things where I'm like, yeah, those are just so routine and we should have no problem with city managers handling those things. It seems like that would be the most effective way to keep city business continuing like in the proper, you know, flow and not blocking, because say a request for an easement comes in tomorrow and city council doesn't meet for 2 weeks, right? Like that could be really disruptive to the flow of business. So I think like I feel really comfortable with that, but I guess I would want to have a better idea of what the expected outcome of this list of criteria would be. And I feel like right now I don't have any sort of expectation of like the consistency of how it would be applied. And I think it's just because it's like, it's an open-ended question. It's not a, if this, then it comes to council, right? So like, I mean, I you know, for the example of purpose, if the purpose is something that is not a city council priority, that should absolutely come to council for consideration of granting an easement, you know. But I guess to me, it's kind of like, it's almost like a, you know, a flow chart of like, if the answer to this is yes, it should always come to council. And I feel like that is not what we have. We have just like, here's a list of things that will be considered for an easement to come in front of council. So that's just my feedback on it.
Councillor Husson?
So I remember this discussion as well. And I think I was the more vocal person that was like, wait, I think I want to know more about easements. And it wasn't specific to this topic. It was, we've transitioned to this form of government, and we're trying to balance the power of the city manager and staff, and really amazing, competent staff, but then also sort of our ability to weigh in. So I'm comfortable letting the city manager and our staff make the decisions around easements. I think to Councillor Duggar's point, like, is there a way to get some sort of report so that we know? I'm comfortable with that. My recollection of this meeting was that I was maybe more vocal, and it was just something that I think some of us grapple with that have been on here, you know, a little bit longer, which is like, right, like, what is it like for council to be able to put their teeth in things while also ensuring that the city can still run? So I'm supportive of easements being routine and handled by the city manager. I'd love to have visibility in some way if that's possible, but also open to any other feedback folks have at 9:37 p.m. on a Tuesday.
12:37. I think I have moved on this quite a bit. I will say, as part of the framer, one of the framers of our form of government we're in now, we put a lot of checks in place based off of bad behavior of a past elected official. And so we were creating rules around what we thought would be the worst case scenario. The disposition policy beyond like the easements we were talking about really came about over a purchase of a piece of property the council didn't approve. And how are we going to set up boundaries so that didn't happen again? And so we continue to live, you know, 2 years later through those choices. I would say I'm comfortable supporting this as routine, but wondering if we could set a sunset for 1 year. And next January, have a work session where we go through and review them. Because what is hard to count the council president's point is, I don't even know what would come to us on this list. And I think that makes it hard for me to like blindly say, yeah, city manager, take the wheel. This is all for you. And this has nothing to do with Jenny. This has everything to do with my experience as elected official for 10 years ago. And while easements are really low on the list, it's like a gateway drug to something else higher up the list of us losing our ability to control things. So I would say if the city manager is amenable to the idea of a sunset, which we don't often do, or however we want to set it up this way, to come back in a year and list every single time she had this authority approved. I don't think like a monthly list right now is good because it's so sporadic. I think if we had a good year's worth of data, we can make a really good informed decision. So I'm optimistically trusting that the process would work with the idea that we can review it in a year. That's where I think we should be. Councillor Tipnon?
Yeah, that was what was rolling around in my head as well, is why don't we, quarterly is probably too much, a year, probably a good data set, and just revisit it then and fine tune it.
Would that be, or sorry, go ahead, Councillor Kimmy.
Yeah, I second Mayor's suggestion.
Would that be workable, Jenny? Like, does that seem like a reasonable approach to this?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we certainly can do that.
And I think might have to adopt framework for this as we kind of work through the city manager's authority and what we're doing, not just in this, but other things. And maybe it's just, trust and verify, but really thinking about how to work some of this in for a future check and balance. Because now we're having a second conversation. People can't remember. I rewatched some of the comments too. I've moved my position from where I was. Councillor Hassan has moved her position as well, because I think we're trying to collectively know where to put our energy. And sometimes we're holding on to things because we have the power when we don't need to be. But I think if we kind of go through this process with other things about, we'll check again in a year. If it doesn't work, we're not tied to it. I think we're going to be able to move things through a little bit quicker. And so we could get to the focus on what we really want to do. Okay, Sarah, do you need anything else from us?
That's perfect. Thank you for a very productive conversation.
Okay. Any council new business? Anything anyone's dying to talk about? Okay, seeing none, I'll close tonight's meeting.
Oh, I think, did you, Councillor Kimmy?
Oh my gosh, Councillor Kimmy, you're on. I almost go.
Yeah. just one quick thing. We've been parking a lot of stuff on council retreat. I just hope that Jenny is putting the list together. I hope it's not like 50 stuff that we have to talk about and we have to, meet like more than 2 times. I just want to mention that.
If only you were one of the 3 people that were assigned to create what we talked about. Okay, well, I'll forgive you because it is 9:42. But I think in all seriousness, for council coming into this, thinking about starting now your list of what you would like to see is important, because if you wait till the last minute, I will tell you, you will just be responding to other people that come with a list. My first 2 years on council, it felt like drinking through a fire hose, where I'd show up and I was just like combating Mark to get my ideas on the board. So I would just say, like, keep a journal, start writing things down that are important to you. I'm guessing there's a lot more in common that the 7 of us have, but like, think about it. This is the most important thing you're going to do, because you have to own what comes out on the other end. No more saying I'm living in someone else's shoes. Like, these are your shoes. This is what you're doing. So it is every single one of our responsibilities to make sure that we create that living list, but especially Councillor Tivnon and Councillor Kimmy, because they're on the subcommittee. All right. Any other new business? Perfect.